Hello, everybody, and welcome back to After Discussing a Murderer after episode 16. This is Jeff Jones.
Back to
And he's got to mute his
discussing a
YouTube.
murderer after.
And with me is a special panel for the live. We'll go around in a round robin sort of way and introduce everybody. So we'll start with Calf and say hello, Calf.
Hello, how is everyone?
Doing great.
Hope everyone had a great Christmas.
Absolutely. And Cal.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the live. Again, like Hav said, I hope everyone had a good Christmas. On to the next.
Yeah, let's get to it. Well, let's say hello to Jack. Jack, how you been?
Doing great, and I'm joining in with Cal and Cap and hoping everyone had an excellent Christmas with family and friends, and absolutely on to the next. Let's do it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, let's get to it. And welcoming Brian. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank y'all. I'm doing well. Thank you. Is that it?
Excellent. So, how's everybody doing? Anything that we have some questions out there? We might get to some pictures later. We kind of just like really having fun with this the last couple times we did it. So, actually, let me hit if I didn't get to you in chat, I apologize, but thanks out there that I can see who's Mick and Jay and Maz and Darkside and Case and Carol, Colette. That's a lot of C names. Bob, nice to see you again, Bob. Behind the music, behind the magic is here. Drinking wine apparently, and it looks like there's some UK people from the UK are kind of waking up, or it's getting too late. What time is it back there? I saw some UK folks. Maybe it's just really early in the morning for them. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here. I really enjoyed the episode that we just watched, the premiere. It was really fun. It moved along really, really quickly. We got to a lot of stuff and really dug deep into it. So that was a lot of fun for me. I had a good holiday, really enjoying and restorative holiday. So as Big Jeff always says, on to the next. What's eating at you guys? What's going on?
Waiting for Judge Sucks at this to give Kathleen a decent civil reply one way or other. No, you can't do it. Or yeah, sure. Go ahead and write your reply back. I'll make her wait this long.
Just eating the clock up, huh?
Yes. Well, I mean, she would have literally, I think, would have taken her not that long to reply. Even going through the states, their rebuttal to Kathleen, I think she had plenty of time to give her reply. So the lull time waiting.
And then I guess with all the Christmas and holidays and things are shut, they've pushed it out until maybe the end of this week or next week.
Hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
I think going by this rate, it'll probably flow into next year.
That's also a possibility. Wait till after the holidays, start fresh, maybe. Yeah.
So maybe we could just quickly address that for the people that I know everyone kind of understands what we're waiting for, but I think people are like kind of getting a little bit like confused on what it means and whether it's going to be a denial or it's going to be an approval. So Kathleen has kind of asked to amend the entire motion now. So she's not just asking for a reply back to the state, which she originally did. The state replied, then she automatically went in and said, hey, can I please reply, which she has to ask for permission. Tracy has come on, I believe, like when we had another live and said, that, I think it was on Foul Play, and said, this is standard, this is what happens. But at that stage, Ange didn't have to necessarily give her that reply back. She didn't have to grant it. Ethically, she should have, and it could maybe be used against her in a court of appeals later, but I guess she didn't have to. She could have always turned around and maybe said, I've got your motion. The state has replied. I can basically come to a conclusion, and I don't need any more. There's nothing you could contribute in a reply that I already don't have. But what she's now asking for is the amendment of the motion, and that's the original motion she put in, and I believe that was in what 2020 that the original motion went through, which was the Denny claim and obviously the Brady of Tom Skowinski's call. And what with an amendment, there is like kind of 3 prongs that it can usually be. If I interpreted this correctly, you can add to an amendment, so you're adding new information. You can remove and certain claims, so you could say, okay, maybe I didn't meet that burden, I'm going to just remove that part. Or you can modify, which is you basically can go in and tidy up, and you can still add certain aspects to it, but you're just cleaning it up and modifying maybe the language or the spelling mistakes and stuff. So it can be one part of the spectrum as really exciting because it could be all new, or it could be just clearly just fixing up and tightening it up, because the state kind of also, and you would have heard me say this, and that was I was looking forward to the state reply because you get to see an angle where they're going to go with it, and we did. So she's using it to her advantage now. She now sees what angle the state are going to take, so she's going in and she could be amending it so she can modify it to clean it up to match what the state said. In my again, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I have researched, I think it's going to be really hard for Ange to deny that. I think she will grant it. I think she will say, yes, do an amendment. However, I think the only thing that I kind of read, and again, this is my interpretation, I'm not a lawyer, so you get what you're paid for, is if Ange kind of says, no, I've already made a decision, and I had already started forming my decision before you asked for that. Therefore, I'm not withdrawing that now. So, yeah, that's where we're kind of at. Like I said, because where we're at, I think that it's probably going to flow into the new year, as frustrating as it is. Because it's not hard for Ange right now just to say yes or no.
I kind of feel that. I feel that a lot. Like, this is a no-brainer. It could have been done already. It's just another tactic to kind of burn up the clock. But I mean, that's lawyerese, isn't it? Isn't that what they do?
What happens when she, like, so now Kathleen Sanders amending it, and then do the state get to reply to that, or is that it then?
Yeah, it does. So if she does get granted to do the amendment, it kind of wipes the original motion. So the amendment becomes the new motion, and then the state can ask to reply to that all over again because it's new. So that's what I mean. And when I first heard about this, I thought it could be done strategically from Kathleen. And I'll give you a quick example why. Don't hold me to it. I just looked at it as this. Kathleen has asked for a reply to the state. At that point, Ange does not have to grant it. Like I said, she could have easily turned around and said, no, nothing you could add will bring value to a decision I can make based on the original motion and what the state replied. With Kathleen asking for that amendment of doing the entire motion, it's almost like a little loophole, because to deny her to add value to her original motion, again, could come against Ange in the long run if it goes to courts of appeal. So I thought it might have been strategic for Kathleen, because if you're asking for an amendment, you're then guaranteed almost that granting. And then you can go in and you can just add what you would have added in a reply motion to the state anyway, but at the same time cleaning it up. So
well, and also she's kind of forced the state to show their hand, right? It's all chess and checkers here.
That's exactly what I'm saying, and that's why I thought it was strategic, and that's why I kept saying to everyone, I'm actually looking forward to seeing what the state reply. I hope anyone's like, why would you want them to fight against her? Because it actually gives Kathleen the upper hand. She gets to see the angle they're coming from, what and how she's going to mold her argument to match that. And I know this is like stupid analogy or metaphor to kind of compare it to in terms of Eminem, but you beat them at their own game by showing you make them basically battle themselves out. They have to dog themselves out, and you win that way. And that's what Kathleen's made them kind of do: show their hand, battle themselves, and then she's now able to kind of go, bang, let's play that.
And so what, they can go back and forward like that for how long? Or is there
No, I think I think there would be an end to it. I think if the amendment is granted and she gets to submit something else, the state gets to reply. I believe that's it, and then, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I think that's it though, and then the judge will make a decision on whether to grant a hearing or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's quite exciting, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just slow. It's just slower and shit to get to that point, right?
Yeah.
Well, we got lots of stuff to explore then, right? A lot of different areas to take a look at while we wait.
Yeah, you just keep picking at certain points. There's always something in this case. It's the case that just keeps giving. It doesn't matter which area you look at. There's something there. And that's without trying to invent. I'm not somebody that's just trying to invent shit to pick at. There's always something in my mind as a reasonable person.
The reasonable person. That's where I'm at. I'm right there with you, Jack. What would the reasonable person assume, right? You got some pictures loaded up? Is that what we're looking at, or did we want to hit a question first, Kel?
That's entirely you. I've got the somebody had said something about looking at the RAV4 I think it was Kel and Kath talking about looking at the RAV4 location. So I pulled up.
Look at some pictures that we got.
Sure.
So ahead, Jack.
Yeah, we'll look at some pictures that we got, and then I want to address a timeline. It kind of goes back to the 31st. I was approached by a supporter who is inquisitive about this timeline. I think as a panel, and especially a lot of us who have already kind of looked into it, I think it'd be interesting just to kind of bring it up and how it all kind of molded into the trial as well. And that's the phone calls on the 31st between Stephen and Teresa's phone using the star 67, and where Dawn calls in at 2:27 on Auto Trader, and they have that 5-minute call. And it's basically let's just go over that and see where our heads are at, because there is again, I'm not going to go into it now because we're going to look at photos, but I think it'd be interesting just to kind of get where we're all at with that, because Dawn plays a significant part in the trial about those phone calls. So let's look at this, and then of course, if we've got time, we'll do that.
Sounds good. Well, this is exhibit, and I'm pulling these just because it was easy to get to. Kel and Kath said, RAV4, the location, and this is what we're talking about, the location of where the RAV was found. And I went to the Stephen Avery case because they're right there. They're easy to get to. This is exhibit 135. And clearly this was taken on the evening. This is Wisconsin in November. It's kind of like here in Michigan. It gets dark really early. Plus it was cloudy. So we don't know. We don't have metadata for this. I can't tell you what time it is, but it was clearly probably, sometime after probably 5:30 or so, because it's clearly dark. So you guys can discuss, or I can move on. I can grab us another photo that might be a little bit earlier in the day.
I have so many questions about the car, about the RAV. Right, okay, let me just start with Tom Skowinski. When he first comes in the driveway and it's pitch black, 2 people are pushing the RAV, how can you not see RAV4 written in white capital letters across the back of that car? For one. Number 2, they covered this car up, but what if they left exposed there?
that big RAV4 Toyota that you could see from, you know, this from the International Space Station.
Yeah, so that's number 2. And number 3, I'm wondering if, I can't quite tell in photos, if someone pushes that car in, well, one, it's facing west. So I'm thinking if it's come in through the back where the quarries are, wouldn't it be facing the other way? So
I agree.
it probably has been pushed down past the crusher. But the other question I have is, if you open the door where that red car is there enough room to open that door and get out?
Well, we'll get to that here in a second. I'll pull something of the photo.
I don't think
yeah, I don't think anyone of any size could get through there, but let me go back here and we'll pull
because
up
then that
one where
means that they would have had to have been sitting in the car.
there's not much room there.
No, but is it enough to open the door and get out? It's hard to tell.
No, to my knowledge, they didn't really do any kind of measurements, so we don't know. I mean,
I just find it really, I don't know. I just thought it would be the first thing you'd sort of mention if you were Tom Skowinski, that you would say it was definitely a RAV. You know, it's written in white capital letters at the back of the car. It'd be one of the first things you'd think that he would see. Not necessarily he saw it, but
I mean, that's what the good people at Toyota want you to see, right?
well, you'd think so, yeah. And that's their advertising.
I mean, they're advertising the vehicle, right? They want that to be red. It's not a VIN number, you know. So I'm kind of with you there, Kath. I like that point. Like,
yeah, and then they cover it up. They cover the whole car, but they leave the RAV4 capital letters exposed on the back of the spare tire there. Like, so just in case we've covered it too much, we'll just leave the fact that it's a RAV4 exposed for everyone to see. I just don't get that.
I don't disagree. And, you know, that this RAV, here's another photo of the back of the car. We don't see, it's cropped on this left side, and we can't really see just distance. There might be another photo. I'll see if I can find it here in a minute. That might be a better photo and give a more precise. And it's not in this collection. It's in another collection of photos. But don't forget about this RAV, this spare tire cover. And this is a pet peeve of mine. On May 24th, I think that's right, 2006, a bunch of shit comes back from the crime lab. They don't have room to store it, so it all gets shipped back to Queso, Calumet County, including the spare tire cover that's been, of course, been removed. And they tried to pull latent prints off of it, and I don't think anything was viable off of it, but it definitely had fingerprints on it. Anyway, that was May 24th, and then it doesn't get assigned a property tag until June 30th, which was 35 days later. Don't know when Uyghur got it, but he apparently got the spare tire cover at some point and kept it for at least some period of time. He turns it into Hawkins, and Hawkins writes a report about it. There's no report about what Uyghur did with it at all. Nothing. I have a problem with that, because that's a police officer that's taken a piece of evidence that has come back from the crime lab that wasn't tagged. He just took it, because all this other shit was tagged with the Calumet County property tag number, but not this spare tire cover. So for all we know, and I'm not saying this is true, for all we know, the spare tire cover that he turned back in is not the original one. We have no idea of knowing, because we don't have any reports that says, hey, I'm Investigator Uyghur, I'm going to take this for blah, blah, blah reason. He just turns it in. It's like, what the hell, man? That's not proper procedure in my book. I'm not a cop, but again, I'm just looking at it as a reasonable person. Why didn't he follow procedure and say, I need to take this and do X, Y, Z to it? I want to look at it, whatever. Pet peeve, sorry for whining about it. And we can't forget about, not to take away from this location aspect of what Kath and Kel are talking about. And it's really important what Kath pointed out. If this thing had come in from a certain direction, it would have been facing the other way unless they went and turned it around somewhere.
You would
How
have
did
had
they
to
get
turn
it?
around.
Exactly. How did the hell they get it in there?
See, it's either, if you
So-
can come straight in from the front, and it's kind of easy to like, kind of. I mean, even if we go with the push scenario, with you don't have to believe that scenario that two guys pushed it on there, but you wouldn't have to turn it around. Then it would be the straight in from coming in from the front. If you come from the back, you do have to like turn it. You have to go around the pond, or you have to just do a wide turn right there. And I think you have a picture, or I know I have a picture of the trail, of how narrow the trail was there next to where the RAV was found. There's part of the trail there. Here, look at that.
It's like,
Yeah,
look
here's
how
a-
much, it's like they're trying to hide it, but then they're leaving the make of the car exposed in capital letters at the back. Is that so Pam could find it?
That's a good question. Pile all this
Well, that's
stuff
the
on. Hey, look.
question that
Yeah. Go ahead, Kath. Go ahead, Kath.
I was just going to say that that's the question that, and I'm not trying to be an asshole here, but I have to reference it because this is in the real time. But this is what the state were pointing out. Like, why? Who's hiding this RAV, and why are you hiding it if you want it to be found? Because you're framing Stephen Avery. So they kind of put it all. The questions you're putting out there, Kath, which are great because it makes us all question it because we've all thought about it as well. It's essentially what the state are making the judge do. Question it. Like it makes no sense for all the reasons you just gave. For me, I'm more interested. I was looking at these pictures the other day and I pointed out to, I know it was you, Kath, and Jeff Jones were on a call. And I said, don't you find that the location the RAV was also found was almost too coincidental? When you look at the aerial shot, it is the only place on the Avery salvage yard that has some kind of coverage, some kind of camouflage. There's trees there. It's on a berm, but there's some kind of protection from an aerial view. So who knew about the aerial view? Why? Like, then I think to myself, who were they then hiding it from? Someone was obviously thinking outside of the 2D. 2D is when you're on the ground and you're looking at it straight on or around it. Who had the thought of thinking of up, up, up? You don't want people that are going up. So that brings in the next question of the timelining. Was the RAV, did someone know that there was a flyover the day before? So when they brought it in, and I'm going to say the 5th only because of Tom Skowinski's affidavit, although disclaimer, I do not believe that one part of his events as being accurate. I don't believe he saw it on the morning of the 5th coming in. Personal opinion, you guys all can believe that. I'm not going to, challenge you on that, but I just don't think it was the morning of the 5th. So going back to what I was saying about the aerial view, was the RAV on it? I know that's not a popular opinion, but was the RAV on it? And someone knew that there was a flyover on the 4th, and then they've panicked, and then they've gone running back and then adding the debris all over it because they're like, oh my God, what if they come back the next day? They might have missed it this time, but let's just make sure that they don't see it again. Or was it the fact that someone knew that there was going to be a flyover coming? And there's all these different variables to that. So again, I think the location has always interested me as well. And then when I went back and I listened to Stephen Avery's interview, I believe it was on the 9th of the 11th, they talk about the crusher. And funny enough, there's that, we all know that there was a blue vehicle that had just been crushed in the crusher still. And Stephen says, that was me. I was the last one that crushed that. And then I was like, did the person that put the RAV down in that location know that Stephen had been working down there recently? So they were trying to bring a connection to him. Again, it's all these questions that leave us like, well, wanting more, but we just don't have the answers because we just don't know. So it kind of ties into everything that Kath just put forward. Why leave the RAV sign so open? You're covering it from who? Why are you covering it? From what angle? And then I start thinking, like the state, because I think that's what you have to do, play the devil's advocate. And I think, okay, so let's theorize that it was Bobby that put the RAV there. What would have happened if Pam didn't come in that day, there was no search party, and the RAV wasn't found? Then who was he hiding it from? Wouldn't be law enforcement, because at this stage of the investigation, they were about to let Stephen go. They had made a conclusion an hour before that RAV was found that the timeline went Speckman, Stephen, and then Zippers. And then all of a sudden, the RAV's found, and then it all goes back to the Avery salvage yard. So what would have happened if Pam never found it that day? And, you know, what would that have meant for the person that planted this? They've gone to the trouble to plant it, to hide it, but hide it from who when you're trying to frame your uncle? But if it never got found, the sliding door moment didn't happen with Pam, then they would have had to have at some time come back and then removed it, because the next people you're trying to hide it from is the family. Because what would have happened if Stephen Avery or Chuck or Earl or whoever it was stumbled across it and they weren't involved and went, what the fuck is this? Because eventually it would have stood out to them, because you read everyone's report. Chuck was like a pit bull of the salvage yard. He knew every vehicle. He knew everybody's like whereabouts. He knew everything about that area. And that would have been like a foreign object to him in his foot. Like, what the hell is that? It would have stood out so quickly. So all these questions make this selection of why it was planted here and why so much more. We need to think of who does it benefit the most.
It's interesting. I really like the point that you make about the 2D, 3D, that, you know, of all the places on the property, these is where you have the like tree, the most tree and shrubbage area. And, you know, Calf said earlier, you could see RAV4 from behind, but then they tried to cover it up. Like, wouldn't you try to cover that part up? And if you want to go down the cops doing something nefarious path with me, I would say it's almost like they're making plausible deniability that, oh, we couldn't see it. That's why we couldn't see it from the flyover, because there was this hood in front of it and it was under a tree. So I don't know. There's a couple different ways to look at it. I don't know when you believe personally that the RAV arrived here. That's up for discussion as well.
Hey, I've got another photo. I'm going to stop this series right now for a second, and I'm going to bring up another one that might give us another better perspective. Give me just 1 second. Present. There you go. Try that one. So, does that give a little better perspective, Kat and Kel? You can see how it looks pretty tight. I mean, you can see he's
they had to lean in, right, to get in there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm over-analysing that. You probably could have been tight, though.
Yep, I agree with you. Probably could squeeze through there. Been tough, been a little tight squeeze getting out. Now, if it were, a bigger person, probably would have had a really difficult time getting out of the door. But if they could have gotten out, they probably could have went sideways and squeezed themselves through there, sidestepping.
Interesting.
Brian, you got any thoughts on all this?
No, I'm just agreeing with y'all. Like playing with buttons here. I mean, I think Pam's pretty dodgy. I don't know how Bobby would have told Pam where the RAV was, but she was pretty determined to go to the salvage yard on that day she went, and she testified. I don't know if it was pre-trial or when, but maybe it was just in her interview. But she said that Tom and the Hallbox would be really make them really feel better if the salvage yard was searched for the car. Like
So
there was a
that
lot
idea
of
was planted
there
in
was a
her
lot.
head.
You're right. That's what I mean because yeah, Wigert felt like Zips was the last stop, and there's something else interesting in that call too with Remaker because I remember discussing it ages ago, so I might be wrong about parts of it, but at this point, but Wigert is relying on Remaker for the timeline. He's like, because he's like, what time did Dieter get off that voicemail? And Remaker's like, oh, it's 2:12, and you know what I mean. But so like Wigert had that timeline, but he didn't have the information that Remaker had to establish that timeline that Zippers was last, and that was like an hour before Pam decided that she wanted to go to the salvage yard.
Well, there's
So
yeah.
so I've always kind of found that a little interesting as well.
It certainly is. That's an interesting timeline.
Basically, at the end of the day, you're looking at that they're trying to hide it, right? But they're not. So there's some thought that's gone into that. They're like, let's cover the car, make out that it's trying to be hidden, but let's just leave the word RAV4 in capital letters across the front exposed for everyone to see, or for the next person who's coming along to find it.
Yeah,
Which
really.
happens-
Like you would see it. You would have to see it.
Well, that's it.
Well,
you cover that up. You're taking the chance of someone walking straight past it.
The RAV was really from, there's other photos and so forth of the cars around that they took, and the RAV was really the only one that had a bunch of shit piled up on top of it. I don't know. I have all kinds of problem with Pam's and Ryan's and Scott Bloodhorn's explanation of how things really kind of came about. That's another area that I kind of pick up. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being too overly biased about it, but to me, I have a real issue with it because Pam and Nicole arrived late for the search. All the other searchers are already gone. Poggle's there testing the fax machine, but even we say, hey, they didn't speak, maybe they did. I don't know. But if Ryan and Scott knew that Teresa had been at the Avery salvage yard, so why hadn't one of the other searchers been assigned to say, hey, can a couple of you guys go down to the salvage yard? Maybe ask permission to go search? No, that's not what happened at all. They get assigned to, Egypt until Nicole and Pam show up, and they're given a camera, Poggle's number, and a map. Something's weird to me. I'm sorry.
It's
just
amazing.
Right.
It is weird.
Ryan testified too that he wasn't even sure he talked to Pam, but then he eventually says, "Okay, well, yeah, I must have." He said there was like so many people there. He's like, "I don't know who I talked to," but and she was related to the Hallbucks. Mike Hallbuck explained exactly how she was related in his testimony. So I don't really know if she even truly did talk to Ryan. I'm kind of on the fence on that.
She also said that she would have searched all day and they would have come back to the next day if they had to.
Absolutely.
Meaning she knew it was there, so she just had to find it.
And David Beach had been there the day before. Surely he reported back like, "Oh yeah, I talked to Steven. He says nothing happened. Whatever. Cool." To me, it seems to me like obviously there's no evidence to prove this or anything, but it really seems to me like the Hallbucks, like there's like Teresa had a reason to be near the salvage yard for like personal business of sorts, and I feel like that's where they were searching until all of a sudden Pam says, "Oh, I gotta go search the salvage yard," because David Beach, and that especially if David Beach is completely 100% factual when he says literally he just stumbled upon the salvage yard. He was searching the area that that she was last seen, blah blah blah, and he just stumbled upon the salvage yard, and so he thought he'd stop by and talk to whoever he could while he was there. In other words, he wasn't searching the salvage yard specifically. That's what he said. And whether or not he's being honest, who knows? But it seems like even Mike and Tim, because they say, or well, Mike does, he testified that they went and searched her last known route at like 7:30 that morning on the 5th. They were searching ditches and whatnot down 147. And again, they didn't seem to go to the salvage yard specifically either. So they would have been searching areas maybe closer to Zippers and I don't know, her route home maybe. Because he gets back home like 10, right before
Just
Pam
quickly,
discovers the
just
route.
quickly for the viewers, do you want to just let everyone know Dave Beach's connection? And I just wanted to throw in there, didn't he say in his report, I think we see it in Queso, that he's when he went and spoke to Stephen, I believe that Stephen was really forthcoming and he was held chilled, like there was nothing there that he felt was off.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's a cousin. I don't remember what, did he live in Green Bay or something. Anyways, he came down as a cousin to help search on 4th.
And his girlfriend or sister came with him. I can't remember which.
Yeah.
Maybe a sister.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, before we get too far away, I noticed this, and this is another scab that I like to pick at, and this is the the CD case, and this thing's got blood all over it. It's hard to tell from this photograph, but it's smeared with blood.
Okay, I got a question about this photo.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're so this is the passenger seat. Is someone actually at any point sitting on the passenger seat?
Brendan, according to one of the stories that got flip-flopped in there.
Yeah, because I'm like thinking, is this staged then, or is anybody sitting in it at any point? Because no one's going to be sitting on those three things, are they?
I wouldn't think so.
Not without some kind of evidence that it's been crushed, especially that water bottle. And I know Kath knows this story, but when I was doing things with LaToya, my daughter, a few years back, and we were doing experiments and stuff, and I had put things on the chair exactly like this. I try to mimic it, but instead of, I think, a spray bottle there, I put a hairbrush. And I didn't have an old school CD case, so I put like a file, like a paper file from school, just something a bit more bulky. And the first thing is when she got in the car, I just wanted to just naturally let her just get in without telling her anything. And she's like, I'm not sitting on this. And she just threw it, like literally just threw it all to the ground. Her instinct was just not to sit on it. Does that change anything? Does that mean anything? No, not necessarily, but we can absolutely see that that water bottle is not being crushed, had been modified in any way with like compressions against it. And I think it would be just completely uncomfortable. And more so, if there's blood on that CD case, why would that person then not have blood on their clothing because of it'll be contact smears? Without going too far, because this is a completely different topic on its own, but do y'all remember the CD case swab? Does anyone remember that CD case swab? What Sherry Culhane produced as the swab for the blood?
I don't. I don't.
My Lord. Oh my Lord. Okay, well, let's save that maybe later, or we can do it in another podcast because I can prepare it, because that is something that I've absolutely withheld for a while, is all my swabs that I did in my blood experiments, and it is absolutely mind-blowing. And it's not just my reenactment, it's what Sherry Culhane produced. Like you said, you can clearly see that there is a smear there with your naked eye. In the documents, I believe that it says that I don't want to misquote it. It's been a little while since I kind of reread it, but it has something like 50% coverage of smeared blood. And then you have the swab that she represents as the swab that she used to test it for blood. We'll leave it there for now because we'll end up going on another rabbit hole. But if you guys have time, my advice is go and look at the swabbing that she produced. I believe it's A10. So no, I want to say A10. while we're talking, I will go and have a look at my pictures because I've got it all, and I'll get back to you guys just a starting point of where to look.
Well, I mean, just to point out to you exactly kind of what you're talking about with your daughter, and any reasonable person, if they're going to sit down in this chair, they're going to move these, and that unless they're wearing gloves, which if it was Brendan, I really doubt that Brendan would have gloves on. So where are the fingerprints?
We don't have any evidence else that there was an actual crime that took place. So you're just he's just waving his hand around. Like he's like, okay, I'll drip a little here now. Okay, was he playing her music? Did he get the CDs out? Why would there be blood on the CD case?
Exactly.
And not, it doesn't make any sense unless you're just like, oh, let's put some on the CD case.
Well, then,
sorry guys, that's what I think.
Yeah, right. And then directly in front of this, I think it was in front of this chair, the passenger seat, they found blood flakes. Again, it's just another rabbit hole that we really can't answer. But the CD case, we don't have, because we don't have a photo of the blood flakes, but this we do. And I just don't get it. I don't understand. And even if there's not fingerprints, why are there not finger smears? Or hand smear, a palm smear, if somebody had gloves on, and there's not, because I think they would have photographed that with a flash where you could easily see it. Yeah,
the reasonable man would assume.
Yeah, one would think, right?
So I just wanted to say it was Q48, and I can't help myself, Jeff. I have sent you the slide that I put together. But if you want to share it now, you are more than welcome.
Yeah,
because it's
I'll
just
come back to Jack. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I'll just hold on. And where is it? Okay, there it is.
None of the blood in the RAV that supposedly is Stevens is natural. Like it's not flowing naturally in any way whatsoever. Like you've got blood, next to where the key ignition is, but then you've got none on the gear.
Right, and none on the steering wheel.
Yeah, exactly. And doors. It's like so randomly placed. It's just not flowing naturally.
Correct.
Now, I'm not trying to be a smart ass, but I am absolutely about to be a smart ass. One would think that swab would have a tinge of blood on it.
Absolutely.
For me, it looks like you've literally ripped it open out of a packet and then just taken a photo of it. Look how clean it looks. This is meant to be a case that was 50% coverage of smeared blood.
Yeah,
and
that don't
she's
add
labeled
up.
Q48 as the swab that she used for DNA.
Yeah, you can see it right next to there. The swab is right there on the left side of the screen.
Yeah.
That's what she found collecting off the CD case. Nothing to see here, guys.
Not tinged at all. I don't know. The CD case is a real another puzzler for me that I just have a real problem with it.
You'd think they'd be able to get some decent fingerprints off that too.
It kind of looks like it was dusted, doesn't it? Look like it's kind of.
Yeah, that definitely
looks
dusted.
They cleaned it with something, or they did something. It doesn't look like a normal CD case. It looks, processed, right? That they put something on there. It almost looks like blood chunkage on the spine of it there, right in the foreground. It's like chunky white. You see, like, what if it was blood and then they put like fingerprint dust over it? You know what I mean? Something like that. Like, just looks like dust on there. I don't know. Something's going on. It's not kosher in my book.
Yeah, well, the blood probably was taken first and then fingerprinted after.
I have another photo. I'll hold on to it, Kath, and it actually does show the distance between. It's not measured, of course. Distance between the red Jeep or whatever the hell that thing is and the RAV.
Right.
Look how shiny it is. in that picture. It's all shiny and like glossy looking almost.
Yep.
I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit, Jack, just to like
I
we
can.
just had the other one up. And if we can
Yep.
toggle back between your picture and my picture, we can really just show like this is all glossy, and you can even see a little bit of maybe what kind of appears to be blood matter right below.
It is. It's all over this area. It's all over that area right there.
There you go.
There's a spot up there.
And
There's a spot right here. Yeah.
And then it turns
Like I
to
said,
that.
It's smeared with blood. You can tell that it is. And I can't really see that well. And I can see it.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. It's the immaculate stain here again. Another man miracle.
There you go.
Big Jeff, you owe me a Coke. All right.
You know what? I can, if you want, let me see here.
Sure.
Where's that photo at? I think we're probably done with that. This is probably an even better photo for, let me stop this share because I've got these in, I'm pulling these from two different locations. I apologize for that, but.
Hey, no worries. I know you got a lot. You know, I think when you talk about cases like this, any project that is massive like this, sometimes it's not about what you have, it's how can you find it, and do you have access to it, and can you find it when you need it at the finger edge, you know. And with that,
yeah,
you are a master.
Well, you know, you don't want to lump everything into the same folders because there's different times, they're different people, you know. So I've tried to separate, but yeah, here you go. So you can see the difference there. So.
Oh, see, and it looks like it, so it goes wider at this end, closest to us, and then smaller to the other end. So it actually looks, geez, that would be tight. I'm starting to think no now.
Yep, it would be like I said, if you know, a thin person, yeah, they probably could have opened the door and squeezed out, maybe. But yeah, I think this is the photo here that somebody had zoomed way in on because there's a reflection and said somebody was in this station wagon over here.
Oh my God!
Because I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
Come on.
You see this image right? You see that? You see? Well, I don't know, but you can see this right here where I don't know if my mouse is showing up. It is showing up. Somebody said there was somebody in this damn car over here, and they're not. It's a reflection. Ah, it's like, oh dear.
They absolutely said there was someone in there. Don't worry, it was sent to Casey.
Oh boy.
She got the the digital photo team out and got to the bottom of that one.
Yeah, she sent Kirby down there to investigate that. Anyway, yeah, this is a good photo, and it does show. Yeah, back here to back, sure, no problem.
Branch or a tree? It looks like it's just thrown there. Is that branch?
Yeah,
just
I think that's a branch. Yeah, it's a branch. It's not growing.
And what about that red car? Surely that would have been taken in and or you know, photos taken.
Oh no.
Fingerprinted too. Maybe it's part of the crime
scene. Criminals
there.
only touch. They only. Yeah, I don't know. You'd think you'd probably try to do something, but then you'd be wrong.
I don't think they took it. I really don't.
No, they didn't. They didn't. But you know, they could have dusted it for prints while it was there, or
Yep. And that hood. Allegedly, Brendan and Stephen moved the hood and leaned it against the RAV.
Is it Wiegert who's on standing up and pointing down? I forget. We do know who this is actually. I can't remember who it is.
Maybe Kel or Calf or Brian can remember. I don't. I can't remember. Okay. Anyone?
I'm not quite sure, to be quite honest with you. I was just going to say, talking about the tight squeeze, didn't it come up with Chuck and Earl at one stage saying that they believed a front loader or a forklift or something on those terms, a machinery would be probably the most likelihoodness of getting it in there? This is going against, you know, now we hear that it was pushed in, but back then in real time, that was their interpretation. Like the way it was found, they were like, that's more of it needed guidance from some kind of machine. And I swear to God, a front loader has come up a few times with the boys.
I'm gonna thumbnail this folder. So this is one of these folders that I've thrown a bunch of photos in. So there's gonna be photos here that are gonna be irrelevant. So don't worry about it.
Before we go to that one, there's that picture that you just had up, Jack. Now, Pamela God didn't move that stick. How did she get past that stick to read the VIN number? Come on, it's impossible.
Oh yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
she couldn't go around to the front.
And I guess she could have. She would have went around all the way around, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it's happened before, guys. It'll happen again.
But then the reason down the bottom there's all sticks and branches and whatnot. Like, be difficult for her to go in at that angle. Look at that.
Yeah, how's she gonna get around this other angle? And she got to go through the scrub, the scruff, and all that to get in there.
Yeah, she must have gone down between the cars. Come on, Pam, you're not fitting down there.
She didn't move that stick. Do you know what I mean? Why would you leave that stick there? The cops put that back there or something afterwards, after she was out, I think.
Well, and again, that brings up the hood. If Brendan and Stephen moved this hood and leaned it up, why didn't they fingerprint it? Just check it. I know it's been in the rain, but you still check. Due diligence, man.
Yeah, I'd be checking for blood on everything, because
that's it.
A23, they may have cut themselves putting all of these sharp sticks and bonnets and whatnot.
So again, I agree what Kel or maybe Cap was talking about a minute ago, using the front end loader to slide that thing right in there. I mean, I don't know. Using the front end loader, that would designate going.
You could break a headlight that way.
Well, it's true. But
why would they presume that a front loader or whatever has put it in there? Why couldn't it have just been pushed in?
It could have been.
It could have been, but it would have been because of the vehicle behind it. And we probably.
I'm guessing that Chuck had said that because that's the way that they work on the salvage yard. That's how they get the cars into their positions. So they just presumed maybe that's how it got there.
It could very well be.
But I think it's just as easy to push it.
Kath, did you want me to put that picture up?
What picture?
The one that you sent.
Oh, I didn't send it.
That was me. That was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wanted just to put that up because it kind of just makes a little bit more sense with what I was talking about before in terms of the aerial view, like the bird eye view.
Yeah, I was actually looking for one, Kel, and I had found one. I know I've got it. No, it's fine. No, I'm glad you found it.
Oh, do you know what? If you can keep looking, it's probably best. I literally was a bit cheeky. I cropped it already as well. I kind of give you like an essence of like the openness of the Avery salvage yard, but I just kind of doodled around the whole that area of just that scrub like that we see. There you go.
I mean, if I'm going to ditch a car,
you can see there's room just to push it in.
If I'm going to ditch a car, that does seem attractive to me to put it up in the brush. I mean, it does kind of just fall into logic a little bit. There's a sea of cars out there, like you could get it anywhere. You just wouldn't you try to put it in an area that no one really goes? I guess this is the furthest lot. And coincidentally, you can't really get much further away from Steven's trailer actually than this, which is funny in itself.
It's not actually funny. It's embarrassing because the state used that against Kathleen. They actually said for a nephew who's framing his uncle that he chooses the most furthest point of the Avery salvage yard to distance him from the crime, like the RAV itself. So what you just said, the state actually used that as an argument. And that's when they do that whole spiel like, well, he could have dumped it in the lake and blah, blah, blah. But that was their point. This area was chosen for a reason. What's the reason? That's speculative, and it's definitely an open discussion because I think you'd have to get into the mind of the framer of why this area? Like, did they instinctively think it would be not easy to be found, period? Was it the fact that, for me, when I think about it, I always think, why would you not plant it in the middle of the Avery Salvage Yard amongst the thousands of cars around it? It'd be literally like a needle in the haystack. This location, it's like you're walking along the perimeter of like the area, and you're going to come across it a lot simpler and a lot faster, because you're not going straight, you're going around it, and then you'd work your way in, almost like a jigsaw puzzle. You start on the outside and then you work on the inside, and someone has already cut that in half by making it simple.
Sure. Absolutely.
Or did they put it there so when they did the flyover, they could say they never saw it?
I mean, it's plausible deniability. I was going to bring that up earlier, and I think the point passed. But if it's plausible deniability that, oh well, we couldn't really see it from up there. The other part is like, you have to put yourself in. It's really hard, like you said, Kel, to put yourself in their shoes. Like, where am I going to put this where the Averys don't see it, right? Like, that's kind of what you're trying to do here. Because if they find it, it ruins the whole plan. Because what if they find it and crush it and get rid of it before you can frame them? Like, what if that, something like that? Chuck actually said it in his interview. If I saw it, I would have crushed it. I don't know what that means, but yeah, it is an interesting coincidence that this is the area with the trees on it. Is it a coincidence?
Yeah, I don't know if it's. I'm not a big believer in coincidence. There are real coincidences in the world, but I'm not a big believer in these kinds of things. But another thing that we can't forget: this area here on this ridge, or this area, is basically about the furthest points you can get away from Stephen's trailer. It's diagonally across the way, all across the fucking yard. I mean, come on.
That's right.
So you have to think about the fact too, right? So if Tom Skowinski is correct in saying that, this was the RAV and it was pushed down past Chuck's crusher and landed there, these two guys have to also, they have to walk away. They haven't got another vehicle with them, so they have to walk back to where their vehicle is. And they're not going to want to walk back down Avery Road.
Oh, hell no, unless they've got something maybe, planted off around Jambo Creek or Cuss Road, or
Cuss Road, Jambo Creek, anywhere around there. Somewhere they've parked a vehicle.
Where are you going to park your car, or where are you going to have someone pick you up? You know what I mean? So it's like, those are your options, right? And I'm not going to go back through. Like, that's the thing. Just imagine if you did bring it through the front and no one saw you, and you sat there for 20 minutes just to make sure no one was alerted of your presence. I don't know.
Okay, so I'm going to just give you guys a thought too as well. And this is what I've been thinking. Okay, so let's put this out here. Let's look at the timeline. So let's go by Tom Skowinski. Tom Skowinski says it happens on the 5th, of the morning of the 5th. Now, what do we know of the morning of the 5th? Why would they be pushing it? Okay, let me back this up. Why do we think they were pushing it? I know in the community, a lot of the theories come from the idea that you're pushing the vehicle because you don't want to wake anyone up. You are trying to reduce the noise. You are reducing the lights. You are reducing animals alerting. You are trying to do it very discreetly. Makes sense, correct? But what do we know about the 5th?
Point, I can hear other people. It's just the last one. I would be able to hear if someone said, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Right?
Yeah. Okay. So my thing is, what do we know about the timeline of the 5th? Well, we know that the only people that were on the Avery Salvage Yard left on the morning of the 5th was Bobby. And I'm going to say that loosely because I'm not sure if that's ever been confirmed or whether that's just kind of how it's fallen into line. Bobby, Stephen, and Ma Avery. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if we believe that this happened on the morning of the 5th, who are they actually hiding it from? Because the two people, well, the main person that you're having to push it past is Chuck, but Chuck is not in his residence. He left the night before. So I've been thinking, if it happened on the morning of the 5th, is this because someone doesn't know the activity that's happening in the Avery Salvage Yard and just assumes that everyone's home? Or is this because the event happened earlier through the week and the reason why they were pushing it was because everyone was still there because no one leaves until the night of the 4th to the morning of the 5th? So that is why there's a few things like this that I think I push back on the idea that the accuracy of the morning of the 5th that Tom claims he saw might not be exactly correct because of these reasons. If you're pushing that RAV on the morning of the 5th, Stephen actually says it in his 9/11 interview. He says, and I quote, anyone could just come down and just come on the Avery Salvage Yard. My Chuck wouldn't hear it. My mum and dad are basically deaf. They wouldn't hear it. I'm so far back, I wouldn't hear it. And then he says, we also have the noise of the gravel pit going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the crushing of all the rocks or whatever that they're doing in the machinery. It would have been disguised in the sound that we would have all heard. So even Stephen's saying that Ma Avery, the likelihood of her hearing it is very low, and he's already ruled himself out. And if Chuck isn't even in the residence, who's pushing it, not realizing that they don't actually have to push it? Again, that's been the fact that they're choosing to push it voluntarily because they're disguising the noise and the sounds and the lights versus pushing it for other mechanical reasons like the battery's flat or the battery or the car won't start. But again, you have to go back and balance all these variables out because that plays a big part. Because if it was someone in the Avery Salvage Yard that knew everyone's activity and the only person you're then pushing it again in front of without wanting to hear it is only Ma or Stephen Avery, especially if you are Bobby Dassey. They're the only two people you've got going against you at this stage on the 5th because everyone else is not there. Unless, and I say that loosely because Barb could have been at Scott's for the night. She might have been at the residence. I really don't know. But again, theoretically, these are the questions we have to ask ourselves. What was happening on the morning of the 5th? The one person that they risked hearing it the most would have been Chuck, and he's not even there.
I don't know. It's a weird one because, like, law enforcement also is so hell bent on that it came through, you know, the quarry. Like they're asking everybody, like, did you see anything down here near the conveyor? And like, I don't know, they're just so in their heads. That's the way it came in until, of course, Tom Sawinski comes about and says, you know, he sees it getting pushed through the front. And then, you know, you've got the law enforcement have told Josh Redant that they believe that the RAV was parked on his property for a period of time. They think it's gone across that field from Stevens at some stage. Like, these are all, you know, from the dog report. So what's going on? Which way has it gone in? Are they driving it around across fields? Are they parking it at Redant's? Are those lights that Stephen and Chuck saw earlier on in the week anything to do with the RAV?
I have a hard time believing anything that comes out of the cop's mouth, like, because when they're talking to Redant, they might be angling at him and trying to pressure him and make it sound like it was plausible that he was involved. So, and they're allowed to lie. They use it as a tactic. They lie all the time. So
yeah, but they're going by the dog reports as well.
Yeah, well.
But there's nothing really concrete on the dog's, you know, indicating that it was actually on his property. Just, you know, head checks a lot of head checks in the area, which would make sense if it had been parked there and then taken away at some point. They're still smelling the scent, but they aren't alerting because the car's obviously been removed.
Yeah, they pushed redolent. The state agents did. And it's really, I don't know how much you guys have been involved in. I personally have been to many junkyards in my earlier life. I don't really work on cars now, but pretty much every junkyard that I went to, not everyone, but most of them got locked up. They were fenced and gated. All of them. So, whoever, Bobby and
too.
Yeah, that's right. And most junkyards do have a dog or two, to guard
just
kind of watch the property.
People allowed to roam up and down. That's how I always
Sure.
saw it. And if you jump over that fence and you try to steal car parts, you're fair game. That dog's going to get you. Like, that's how I remember it.
That's where you hear a lot of that saying, meaner than a junkyard dog, because a lot of them are mean as hell. But whether whoever these people were that Sawinski allegedly saw pushing the RAV or pushing a car or whatever, I don't know. That's a whole another can of worms there. I'm not going to get into.
I don't know who just sent me this picture, Calf. Oh, go ahead, Jack. Were you finishing your?
No. I'm done. No, go ahead.
Calf, what did you send me this picture about the tarp over the RAV? This is an interesting thing too. And as you were showing it to me, I kind of was like thinking, in football, right? Or I guess usually it happens in football, and there's like a quarterback or something, and he gets injured, and they want to give him a shot. They want to use a needle, but they don't want anyone to see it. They make a little tent on the sideline, and they just shoot him up so the cameras can't see.
Yep.
That's what kind of flashed through my head when I looked at this picture, because it's like, you don't think they would do it right there, do you?
Well,
I just you have to take into consideration how many chances are they going to get. What if another law enforcement officer comes in and with a torch and starts looking through the windows and there's no blood in there? And then the following day, all of a sudden, there's blood on a CD case. There's blood near the key ignition. There's blood in the back there. I don't know. Maybe you can't see it, visibly to the eye, but you just are you willing to take that risk of planning it later, or are you going to plant it right there if you get the opportunity?
Yeah, their big mistake was not rolling that thing over to an Avery garage and opening it on the spot. This is a rabbit hole that they've opened up themselves, to me.
Mm.
It is. Absolutely it is. Because of their conduct, because the way they did it. They didn't take enough pictures. Go ahead, Kel.
Just quickly, I wanted to address, is it Yoga's question? He said before, you have to wonder if Tom Skowinski would have testified, what would have happened. I just want to break that down in two answers. Well, three, because one, I don't, the truth is one, I don't know. That's as real as it gets. I don't know how it would have happened, but let me just hit it on two other points. The first point is, I don't think he even would have made it. And why I say that is because when you go back to the 2021 Courts of Appeal decision and opinion, and I have mentioned this several times in a few podcasts now, but you really have to go back and read it and really understand it, because they already addressed all this in a sense. Not so much Tom Skowinski, but the overall the totality of it. And the reason why I say I don't think he would have even made it is because Tom Skowinski would have had to have come under the Denny prong. And the Courts of Appeal have made a very, very open on that. And that is the fact that even back in 2021, looking at the DASI computer content, that never would have reached the bar to reach motive. They have made that very clear already to Kathleen. Your bar of your DASI computer content has, one, been highly misrepresented by yourself, and secondly, it has no intent or direct connection to the crime. Therefore, you cannot rely on your one expert saying that you think it's Bobby because you're opining the fact that he's home with nothing to support that. So for Tom to come in, he would have had to have fallen under Denny. Denny has been looked in this case, I think, a total of twice now. Back in 2010, when Judge Willis looked at it purely at Bobby as well and said, no, he's not in. And courts of appeal have recently, in 2021, have reviewed Bobby again. And at that stage, back in 2021, has said, at this point, you still haven't reached it. That's when they opened the door for her and said, however, although we've already made this opinion, now that you have got Tom Skowinski, we will allow you to go back and go and kind of put it all together, and we've left the door open and we've kind of guided you what you need. However, when you read the fine print, and especially when you get to the conclusion, they actually say to her throughout the course of appeal of 2021 and the end that when she brings forward this, she has to overcome another potential barring issue. And that stems from the fact that in the 2017 is when the DASI computer content kind of comes up and it's all kind of gets revealed. And she talks about the technology of 2017, you know, kind of helping develop that as a motive. But what they're saying is there is nothing that she has produced since then that brings value to it. Therefore, she has to overcome the procedural barring of why she hasn't added this to earlier motions, because she hasn't produced anything new. That this could have all been heard years ago in her motions. So that's in the fine print. And they actually say that you can go, we've given you an idea of where to go with Tom Skowinski, but you still have a hurdle of a potential procedurally barring to it. And there's more, and you can't come to us with the motive of the DASI computer, or it's in a paragraph. It's a point 25, I think it's on page 68. And funny enough, the state, in their reply, they reference this paragraph 3 times. They keep putting it as a footnote, refer to this has already been opinionated from the course of appeal, and they've already done the hard work for you. You can let it go. So in where we're at now, I get what you're trying to say, like what could have happened. Knowing what we're at now with it, it would never have reached the bar of the Denny, because he was always missing the motive prong, because the motive prong is now relied on the computer. And in 2021, they're already saying the computer is not motive at this point. And they said, you have misrepresented it. We have gone back and looked at everything you have submitted as exhibits, and none of it represents Teresa Holbach the way you're trying to put it, and none of it represents intent to commit the crime that's specifically linked to Teresa Holbach. And that's why the Dressler case keeps coming up, because Kathleen's trying to twist it one way and the state are trying to twist it the other way, saying, Kathleen's not representing the Dressler case correctly. And thirdly, my point is in terms of where could it have been, I always fear that Tom Skowinski back then could have actually been damning for Stephen Avery. And the reason why I say that is because if they did know about Tom and they went to him first, he could have been actually a great witness for the state, a third party independent witness. If they can convince a 16-year-old intellectual boy to confess to a crime he never committed, a rape and this horrific crime, they could have convinced Tom Skowinski back then that he was an eyewitness to seeing Stephen Avery pushing the RAV, and convinced him that it was Stephen that they saw. So in a sense, I still stand by my first point. I'm giving you these alternatives, but I don't know how it would have went. But when you look at the law, what they've cited in the now, it never would have made it, especially under the Denny, because that's where it would have fallen. And thirdly, in an overall sense, they could have also created a new witness for the state. So I wanted to address that because I see it actually come up a lot, and it's very fair to think about it because it's real. And I think that's what Kathleen is trying to say now. Like, regardless which point it could have went, you robbed us of a chance to even have that. No one knew about this phone call. You robbed the defense of being able to investigate it. And that is what the state is saying. This doesn't make it Elena Brady. It makes it a loss of an investigation that could have happened, because you can't know whether it would have went left, right, or in the middle. And that is where they're trying to hammer down on that. So I really wanted to approach that, because I think that comes up a lot. Again, it's fair, but it's not as straight out as what we would want it to be.
Nice. Well, we got another question here. Thank you, Calf. Ever wondered if the dogs were hitting on the tarps or the RAV? What do you mean by that, Calf?
Well, like if somehow they've gotten maybe Teresa's scent on the tarp, or Stephen's or whatever, and the dogs are hitting on the tarps, because there's also a tarp at Cuss Road as well.
That's right.
It's a very confusing place for a cadaver dog or a scent dog to actually nail down what they're trying to smell out, because it's a salvage yard. So you've got to take into consideration there's probably dead bodies scent still in some of those vehicles. There'd be blood on the property in and around cars.
What is a tarp going to do anyway? And doesn't this slide that you provided, doesn't it kind of say that they barely put the tarp up just for a little short while, and then they took it off, and then it rained after they took the tarp down?
Yes.
So what was, I think it's a great question you have. What was the purpose of the tarp? It's really got my brain kind of going to that idea. Like, what kind of funny business were they up to under this here tarp where no one can see what they're doing? Interesting.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. Like, I'd love to hear other people's opinions on the tarps.
Well, I'm interested in tarp opinions as well. Yeah, don't listen to T1. Come on, T1. Jack, do you have another slide set up here?
I do. These are not outside photos. Some of them are. These are just a series of photographs that Sunshine Christina got from the corner way back. It's been several months now. But some of these are, like, you remember when I talked about, this one's not clipped and cropped. These are photos that were in the coroner's office. They had in a folder that they scanned. So some of them are photos that until she got them, here several months ago, I'd never seen. I dare say no one has seen them. So I thought that while we were talking about the RAV, that we would go through them rather quickly and just kind of show them. And I apologize, they're turned weird. I have no control over that, but I can flip them. Not a big deal. Some of these are just oddball that, and it clearly says that there's more photos out there that we never got to see, because at least this one here.
The labels are missing.
I'm just saying that they're photos that just didn't seem to make it into evidence or whatever, or at least we never got to see them. Oops, I went too far there. No, I didn't. Here's another one. This is one of the hood. And of course, there's another branch that's got piled up, and then the plywood down there. But this hood, again, allegedly Stephen and Brendan moved it. Why didn't you fingerprint the damn thing? Prove they did or they didn't. Or it's inconclusive, one of the three. This one's flipped also.
What is this now? Oh, there we go.
So again, this front, plywood stacked up. There was people have even talked about that the cops restaged the area around so they could take photos of allegedly how it was found. That's speculation. Here's another one.
Let's look at that picture again there that you had, because we were talking about Pamela God coming around the other way. Now that's the other way, guys.
Yeah, this is the outside where the
That's
road
how she-
is looking.
Right. So if she couldn't squeeze in between the red vehicle and the RAV4 to check the VIN number on the driver's side, then this is what she's walking. She's crawling through this. So obviously
Yeah.
something has been staged for photos.
Well,
It's just,
yeah.
it has to be. Pamela God does not walk through that branch and lean. Like, I don't think most of us here right now would be able to squeeze past that branch to check the VIN number. You know, it's absurd. So it just
Not-
kind of demonstrates to me that there's funny business going on already. And then they put the tarp up and hide and stuff. Well, what's this one? What do you got here? Nice.
Well, this
nice
is just
angle.
it's another angle
Yeah.
toward the front.
How are you going to get in there? How are you going to get to the VIN number? It's absurd. Yeah, that's right, T1. Aliens did it, huh? They just... Such a great solution for everything, isn't it? Well, the aliens must have done it.
Of course, this is the back. Moving forward. Now this one's of the Grand Dam.
That's the Grand Dam.
Yep. Again, this is just a collection of photos that the coroner had that scanned and sent to Christina. And remember, they took the Grand Dam on the 6th when they pulled Brendan and it was Brad, wasn't it? Was it Brad?
Say again? I don't remember.
When they pulled him over in Crivets.
Oh, that's right. Who was driving?
I think it was Brad.
I thought it was Brian.
Or maybe it was Brian. Yeah,
maybe
I
it
can't
was
remember.
Brian.
Yeah, I think it was Brian. So, and then that's where they're hauling it away. And then, of course, the RAV, we've seen that photo. Here's a good one of the front of the damage. Nice clear photo. You know, there was I've talked a lot about, and this actually was an idea that yours brought up to me, that something got sucked up into the wheel. You can't see it in this back, but got sucked in and came around here in the inner fender and busted the light out and did that damage inside that inner fender. Can't say that that's exactly what happened, but not saying it couldn't have either, because this whole thing looks like it's been pushed out. This, where it's cracked here. See how that's cracked? It looks like it's been pushed forward. And of course, it could have went backwards. I don't know. Just trying to figure out how this damage happened. Of course, we've all seen.
To me, you know, it just looks like a pole, and I've seen someone demonstrate some damage of a barbed wire fence that did some similar damage to that poke. You know, there's a poke in that bumper.
Yeah.
And I did see that was. I mean, I looked. A few of us were looking at all kinds of different damage to cars to try to replicate what that looks like, and there was one that did look like if they're like, this is what happens when you run into a barbed wire fence with your car, and then when you get it out, see, there's that ripping motion when you back out, right? And that's how you get those poke holes. But I'm not saying that that's for surely what happened, but it's one idea I've heard.
I zoomed in on this because of of course, A23.
Where's A23? Right in that?
I
thought it was when you open the door.
No. A23 is right in this area right here.
Okay. Where you would have to, if you have blood on your hands and you're trying to open that up.
Yeah.
I even think there's some higher on that little panel there, that little handle. Yeah, I mean, did they swab under the handle? Did they look for anything under that handle that the killer had to touch? Had to.
I don't know if Culhane's swab. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Please finish what you're saying.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know if Culhane swabbed underneath that, because right here, you can see this section right here. That's what you lift up to open that cargo door.
That's
you
right.
pull that up. I don't know if she swabbed under or not. Maybe. Go ahead, Kel.
A23 is so interesting for everyone. I know that, because it could be potentially the key to the whole crime. Like if it's a third party and it's their blood, then hallelujah, we've got the killer. But I've always feared that when you reread, you know, Colhane up on the stand, and she's like, well, it wasn't Stephen Avery. No, it wasn't. And she was basically twisted to get that out of her. She wasn't willingly wanting to go there. If it wasn't for Ken Kratz and his fat mouth dropping that into the introduction at the beginning of the trial, and then Jerry and Buting, oh no, they're the same person, Jerry Buting, Dean and Jerry then having to go back and then circulating back to her to kind of reveal that would have got missed. He would have got away with that. So my point of it is she wasn't willingly giving up information. And my only thing that I say this fairly but loosely, because it's definitely speculative and I'm not sure, but although she did say outright it wasn't Stephen Avery's, she never not said it was not anyone else. And I know that everyone's like, so my point is, I don't think that you can always rule out that it was Teresa's blood. Hear me out. It could be the killer's handprint from her blood that they've
That's
exposed.
Right.
Because she wasn't giving any more than she was asked directly. She wasn't giving them anything else. And Ken Kratz was leading. Most of his, when you go back and read, he did a lot of leading in his questions to her, which is usually an no. But he seemed to get away with it because the crafty fucker has a gift of the gab and was able to word salad it to play into his favor. And I think that's essentially what helped him win the case, was because he was you got to give him credit for that. He was able to play words and get around certain things. And I think he could have done it here. I think he led her into what he needed to get her to say. And when it came to Buting's turn, she wasn't going to give him any more than what he asked. And she was probably told early on from Ken Kratz before they went on there, was give them nothing. Answer them directly, but we try to divert and object as much as we can to buy you time to think of how to give it back. But she never not says it's not Teresa. And she just always is like, I don't know, it was a partial and I didn't go further than that. Now they didn't say, was it Teresa? She just leaves it as that. So she's not giving them any more than what they wanted. So in fairness, although A23 could be the mic drop moment, it could literally turn out to be Teresa's blood in the palm print or the handprint of the killer. And we're not even sure if that wasn't a glove that they were wearing.
Yeah, I wish we could get that one put to bed one way or the other. I really do. I'm like you, and I'm sure Dr. Sutman, this is hangs around his neck too, because A23 is really questionable. But not only that, and if you look, I don't know if anybody's while you've been talking have noticed, but if you look right here, what do you see here, and what do you see here? I mean, to me, this looks like somebody's put their hands on it to push, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's what it is.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. No doubt.
Really sticks out, and in this particular photo, it really stands out. And there's something down here, but I think that's just wrinkles or whatever. But anyway, here's another really good photo. But apparently they didn't get anything from it. These were inconclusive. What Riddle said. He was the fingerprint examiner. And yet another crime lab photo. And then, of course, here's some more. We've seen these before. Nothing spectacularly new here. We're going to come across on one. Oh, crap. Here we go. This is a better photo than the one that's on StephenAveryCase.org. To me, it is, because it's more detailed. You can clearly see blood right there. I can see some here, here. It's all over the damn thing. And for Colleen to come up with a clean swab, that was a great point, Kel. Wow.
That's almost man miracle status there, that one. That is a miracle that she couldn't pull off even a little bit of blood from that CD case. How is that possible?
I don't know.
Some faulty Q-tips, I guess, huh?
The blue bag. We've looked at these before at some length. Anyway, I really just wanted to show these right quick for people that hadn't seen these photos that Christina got. Not everyone has seen them. You know, there's another better photo of the tripod bag. Yep.
Yeah. See the tripod bag? Right. There looks like there's something there. See on the bottom right-hand corner there? Is that the actual tripod itself, is it?
Looks like it. I see that.
Yeah, you'd think to yourself, since they burnt all the electronics, that they're not necessarily needing to burn this bag, but you'd think that they probably would have opened it and checked inside.
You would think.
Yeah, but it doesn't look that way, does it? Because you can see the pull string is still in place, like it hasn't been looked in.
Yep, I agree.
And if they're not looking in that, why not? Is it because they know what's in there?
I don't know.
And it's to no relevancy to them.
And of course the drip.
And then there's another one, like inside, just inside the car. That's kind of outside the car. And then there's another one. Big drip and little drip.
Mm-hmm.
I see that actually a lot of them that aren't really photoed that well. Like you go, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Brian that recently found a blood stain that I'd never seen before. Like, oh yeah. Just because it wasn't identified by their evidence team doesn't mean that there wasn't more though.
Was this at?
In one of the wheel wells, one of the door wells.
Oh.
Wasn't it just Denny? I'm sure he found one.
Maybe it was just Denny that found it, yeah.
Yes, the driver's side back door in the
right.
wheel well. I think it was somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think pretty sure he found another spot.
And then, of course, the infamous gull wing. What else? Oh, yeah, here we go. Here.
It kind of follows the pattern of copying the Grand Dam. Like if you got your eyes on the Grand Dam and you're like, look at Stephen was bleeding all over his Grand Dam. You just kind of copied that idea and transposed that into the RAV4. That's how it seems to me. You know what I mean?
Right. And of course here
the blueprint is right there. It is. What's that now? It's missing, right? Never seen it again, right?
You know, I think this is part of the same bag. You talking about this blue bag here? The tripod bag?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all one bag there. Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, this is her CD player. You can see I think this is the cassette insert that allows the CD player to play.
Now, is that where you keep your CD player with your cassette thing?
Well, I wouldn't, but
that's not where I would keep mine. I'm just saying.
Looks like it's just been
CDs like face down on the carpet behind me. So maybe you might want to fingerprint that, huh?
You would think. Looks to me like it's just been slung back there. And of course, the infamous tire tool that does not belong to the Toyota. This is an aftermarket. Came in an emergency roadside kit. We know that for sure. Did not come with the Toyota kit toolkit. Better photo of it. There you go. Here's a better photo of the bag. See, it goes straight across there. That tripod. But I'm like, Cap, why the hell wouldn't you open it again? Get this stuff fingerprinted. And this stuff too. Anyway, the tower tool. Yeah.
similar to the one that's provided in my Volkswagen, actually. It does. And my Volkswagen's like a 96. So
Yeah, I've got those photos somewhere
like
that
the same era, before 99. It looks older than a 99, to be honest. So
Kent 3334 sent some photos to us on Discord several months ago from his emergency roadside kit, showing what their tire tool looks like, and it looks exactly like that. The handle, everything looked exactly like it. And I'm
which car was that
referring.
now again? Do you remember which car that was?
No, it came from in an emergency roadside kit. The tire tool.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry, I misheard you. So they found an identical one in an emergency kit.
Well, that's what it came from. But what I'm alluding to with that tire tool is the one that allegedly Tom Pierce gave Teresa this emergency roadside kit. Where the hell is it at?
Right. Where's the rest of the kit?
Yep.
And
of course
oh God, don't get me started. I might have to dip my toe in this, Jack. I'm sorry. I know everyone says that this is blood and that it was removed. I'm not sold. I think it could just be a reflection.
Well, I mean, you got this seat belt hanging down. We've talked about this before. I don't know what this is.
That's what locks the back seats into place into the floor. So
yeah, I don't know what this is behind it. That looks like it's actually, I don't know if that's something laying on the parking lot or.
I think it's part of the seat, to be honest, because the chair locks in. If you back out, you can see the hole where it locks into. When you set the chair down, see, there's what it locks into, that bar right there.
Right there.
I think it's part of that because you can kind of see it on the other one. You can kind of see, yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's where it locks in, right? And if you look at the other one, it does seem like that hardware exists on the other seat too without the light. That's what I always thought.
Well, it's right. It's right here. And right. This is the seat belt's covering the lever. Right. Yeah, it's covering it. Exactly. But I don't know if this is a reflection or something on it, because it's too pixelated. I don't know. Could it be the belt?
I mean, it could be, but I'm not sure.
I'm not either. This looks like shadow.
Yes.
Beside that locking latch. But this other side, I don't know. Anyway, this is just a better photo of the one that we normally see that's in the evidence. To me, it's a better photo.
Thank you, Dark Side. Have a good night.
Good night, Dark.
Good night.
Super lady. Love Dark Side.
Got to give Dark Side a shout out.
Absolutely. And again, another photo, basically the same thing. We've all seen this one.
Ain't gonna hurt maybe it again, though, Jack. It looks, it looks real crusty. Like, look at that on the far left side, how thick and how long that her head must have been sitting there, creating that big. It's almost a vein. You know what I'm saying? It's a thick puddle that has sat there for a long period of time. I don't know.
Yeah, it you can see that, it's probably, well, it's more than likely hair, bloodied hair, but you can see that the blood is coagulated as well. But yeah, I don't know about that. Looks like it's ran onto the carpet as well.
Yeah, but it looks like
there's some spots above that too. Can you go see on that back panel there above? There's a couple of drops. One's going one way, and then there's just droplets as well. See the droplets? So that's sort of like a smear.
I never noticed those before. Right there.
Yeah, have a look at have you noticed the droplets before? So see that droplet on the left?
I had not. right there.
Yes, and there's another one I think above that, which is cast off. So I'm a bit unsure of what's going on in the back. Then you have another.
It does kind of look like a pattern there, doesn't it?
Yeah, you've got to follow.
Interesting,
So when
Kath.
blood splatters, you follow the tail of the way that the blood had hit the object. So
going towards the back seat. Whammo.
yes, yep, you're right.
I've heard people say, like, what if she was not completely knocked out and there was some struggle in the back, and there's always this talk about a missing mat. You can kind of see the lines here. You see how the blood kind of forms a little, it's kind of like, what would be in the way to keep that blood from dripping down into the carpet? Why does it stop?
Cargo mat. It's gone.
Cargo mat. And that's what a lot of us, I'm one of them, sounds like Jack is too, believes that there's very likely a cargo mat missing, and that had, who knows, maybe that's the pool of blood Ken Kratz referred to, and it somehow disappeared because it was too difficult to explain away.
I definitely believe there was a cargo mat back there that got yanked out at whatever point.
I mean, this is like how, I've unloaded and loaded a lot of things in my life. And if you have a mat or a tarp or something like that, something heavy, and let's say, Jack, you're driving the car and I'm standing in the back and I'm holding the mat. Now you gas it and I hold the mat. You know what's going to happen? Everything's just going to fall out because of inertia. And so it would be so easy to do something like that, to pull, a mat with the body, whatever, wrapped up in a tarp. I've heard some people suggest it's possible, right? And in one clean motion. Two people would have an easy time. One person is going to have a rough go at this.
The only problem with the mat theory is this right here, and I'll zoom in on it.
It is a good point.
Well, if you've got a mat, because those cargo mats they're not super thick, but they're thick enough. They have a backing on them, so stains won't go through. I just don't know that it's going to leave that kind of indentation if a cargo mat's there. So could it have been something else, not a cargo mat? I don't know. That's my only real problem. But I do think there was a cargo mat. I do.
It's just that those lines look too... And then, because where's the rest of the blood? Blood goes down. Where's the blood on the... How does it only hit the panel? You know what I'm saying? Like, how does it only get on that panel and it doesn't get down on the carpet? Why don't we see more on the carpet? It's just implausible.
Now that Cass brought this up, I'm going to, later on tonight, I'm sure I'm going to be pulling these photos back up, and seeing if I can see more blood back here.
There you go.
I'd never noticed that before. That's a good eye.
It's not just there, but if you go on the other side, I've found blood drips, a few spots on the left-hand panels as well, like drops.
That's interesting.
There's a few, and there's drops that we see on the actual the door panel where it could have dripped off from the door, but when you first open it, you look at it, like the bumper kind of thing, you see a few drops there as well, but we just don't discuss it enough. There is actually quite a few little smear marks around that whole area if you really look. And there's even one on the driver's side door, almost identical to where they found the drip on the passenger side. It's almost like someone started off there and then decided to go at the back instead. Denny and I were looking at pictures about 2 years ago, and he zoomed in and was like, "Oh my God, look at that." I was like, my God, how come they never tested that? And that's the ultimate question, isn't it? How did they miss this one as well?
Yeah, I'm looking for that. I can't seem to find it, but I'll keep looking. I'm wondering if there's any chance that that she was put in the back cargo door shut and she was attacked.
Maybe. This photo here, of course, this is the peg that's on the bottom of the back seat. And I see a red tinge here. I don't know if you guys see that or not, but I see a red tinge to this, like this was setting in blood. I don't know that that's true. I can't prove it, obviously. But there's clearly stuff stuck to it. from maybe that's carpet. Maybe that's carpet fibers. I don't know. What else we got? This is here's the left side. Not a really very lit angle like the other side. And I don't know if this is a wrapper or part of that tire tool that's sticking out in the back that we saw a photo of earlier. Let's see what else here. Yeah, of course, here's the back. I think everyone's seen this photo. Cargo door. I have to turn this one. There we go. We've all seen this photo before. Nothing new here. And what else?
I found it, Kath. I found it. I'm going to send it to you now, Jeff Jones.
Awesome, Cal.
What's the battery? Yep, this is the last one. This is the last one in the bunch that Christina got. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. You can do Cal's photo or Cal's photo.
Did you send it, Cal?
I did.
Oh, I see it. Coming right up, folks. Thanks again for joining us, everybody. It's always so much fun to do this. Really appreciate you guys supporting the channel, checking this out with us. Here we go. Is that what you're looking for?
That's the one. So that was found on the driver's side panel.
Behind the driver's side, back rear panel.
On top of the wheel well. On the inside, you open the door, and that's in there. But it's not in the car compartment part. It's technically out of the car. It's under the door where the door closes. Yeah, like the door jamb.
Exactly like the back panel that we see. Is exactly, but just on the other side and on the driver's side instead.
You ever seen that before, Jack? Jack might have took a break. No,
I didn't. No, I have not. It's a great find.
Well, there you guys have it. We're finding new stuff all the time. There's additional blood, and that's the thing is, it's like,
how the hell did I miss that?
I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of people did.
No, well, I'm really talking about the crime lab.
Yeah. Oh, I wish Kathleen could get it.
Absolutely, that's interesting. No, I'd never seen that before. And where's this at exactly again?
It's on the driver's side panel. So it's basically identical to the idea that we see on the passenger side.
In the door. Oh, in the door jamb.
Oh, back in the door jamb. Yeah.
But instead, this was on the this was on the driver's side. So it's like someone went to put some here as well and didn't even have enough. Let's move it to the back.
Do we know that this is the driver's door or the door behind the driver's door?
No, it's definitely the driver's door.
The driver's door. Okay.
No, it's definitely. No. I'm sure it was the driver's side. It was the driver's side because me and Denny were looking at it, and I'm saying right in
behind the driver's side, but in the back.
In the back. We could probably look this because you could find a picture and compare. Because I'm sure they're not identical, the front and the back latch. So we could figure this out for sure. But yeah, I'm guessing back. That'd be my guess. And you guys are saying back?
Yes.
The information you have.
I'm saying front. I'm actually saying front on this one.
Is it the front?
No.
couldn't it be
Yes, no one's
easy for us?
Oh,
You know,
It was
agree.
the front driver's side, and then they moved it to the back passenger. It was the front driver's side. I'm swear of it.
right. Okay.
Yeah, just keep it respectful out there too, folks. We're not going to do any mud pictures. I'm sorry. I'm not reading the tea leaves of the mud. Okay, cool picture. What else do we have? What else was on our docket? Did
I
we
think
get
we
all of
could
our
just
questions?
quickly.
Yeah.
I think we have. I think we could just, because I know we're going on like 2 hours. Maybe just. I did promise that I would bring this up. So maybe if we just quickly go through it and get
Yeah, let's do it.
thoughts. That's the timeline of the phone calls and how
Sure,
Dawn
let's do it.
plays into effect. Are you guys cool with that? Quickly, if we go through that.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the idea. Let's just Jack, do you want to take this one, or are you happy for me to do it? Does anyone want to kind of lead into it?
No, go for it.
Explain it to me. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay, so
I'm
let's
the winner.
address it. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning, the 31st. We have call logs from Stephen Avery. The first one is at 2:24 p.m. in the afternoon. He calls Teresa's cell phone, and he uses the *67. Everyone knows that because Ken Kratz makes out that it was part of the luring narrative. So
You lure someone over by not giving
hiding
them
your
your
number.
phone number, hiding your
Basically,
phone number.
yeah.
That's how you lure. Great.
I know it never made sense. That's why we all still laugh. But let's address that. So that was part of the narrative. So I went back and I've read his very first statements, especially his very early affidavits, and I listened to his 9/11 interview with Fassi and Wiegert, and you hear he actually gets flustered with this conversation. This one really gets him. And he actually gets real pissy about it because they loop him in. And I'll explain it. I've got to explain it so we can keep up with the timeline. I don't like steering off, but it's hard because this is how the case goes. So in the 9/11 interview, they ask him like 3 different ways. Indirectly and directly, did you see Teresa on her phone? So they kind of ask him like straight up going, hey, was Teresa on her phone when you saw her? And Steve goes, no. And then they kind of go around and they come back and then they kind of drop it again going, so you never heard her phone ring? And he goes, no. And then they go off and they bring him back around and then they kind of go, okay, so you never like saw her with the phone, heard the phone, touched the phone, anything. So I think what they were trying to do then was trying to make that connection to the last phone call, which we know is at 2:41, until she does that call forwarding feature. And so he gets really flustered, and then they kind of bring up about his phone calls, like why were you using *67? And his very original statements is this: I tried calling at 2:24 because I wanted to see how long she was going to be. I hid my number so she wasn't obliged or felt pressured to call me back. And then I, make her feel like she has to hurry or whatever. So if she answered, she answered. If she didn't, she didn't. And that's how he says the 2:24 kind of phone call happened. Then we have Dawn from Auto Trader call at 2:27. And we have a timestamp for that. Isn't it like 5 minutes, Kath? Like there's a 5-minute conversation. We can see the duration of the phone call, and it means that she would have hung up around, I think we worked out to be 2:33, 2:32-ish, would have been the end of that conversation. And then we see on Stephen's phone records, not Teresa's, but Stephen's, at 14:35, he dials her number, but it does not connect. There is 0 seconds connected to it. So it captures it on Stephen's, but it never even reaches Teresa's line. It doesn't even ring. And then nothing. And then we see, and that's still on the star 67, and then there's nothing. And then the very next phone call we see, obviously, is the 221 coming in, but Teresa call forwards it, and then nothing. She goes off grid. And then the very next phone call we see pop back up on her phone list is Stephen Avery again. But this time, he has removed star 67, and he's calling her back at like 4:35. I think it's 2 hours to the T of one of his original phone calls. And then he's saying, I was calling to see if she would come back to take a picture of the front loader. And this is where he gets flustered. They're like, so you waited 2 hours knowing she was out of the area to call it back. Yeah, you just told me your mum's been here. You've been listening to music. And he's like going, oh, now I'm getting confused. And he goes, no. What he says is, he goes, right, this is my narrative. At 2:24, I tried calling her to see where she was. And star 67, she doesn't answer. I go to the voicemail. It's like an 8-second call, and it goes to voicemail. Doesn't answer it. Then he said, she came directly after that. She came in at just after I hung up at 2:24. She was here for not even 3 minutes, and then she was gone. And then they said, okay, so what were you calling back for the 14:35 one? He originally says, and he keeps his same narrative all the way up to 2016 to 2017. And that was, I went to call her immediately back because she had just left. She had just left the property at 14:35. So I was going to call her back, but then I realized, no, I'll leave it for another time. And then I decided to call her back just to make another time and another day in a few hours' time. And that's the 14:35. So come 2018, Kathleen gets him to do a supplemental motion affidavit. So he's going in and he's amending it, because at that stage, his original affidavit was exactly what I just described. But funny enough, in his very first affidavit, he states that when he tried calling her at 14:24, that he hung up the phone, and as he hung up the phone, she rocked up. He was then having to put on his shoes. He was watching her through the window, and then she started to walk towards his trailer. That is when he gets up, he walks out and meets her, then they turn around and go back to the car. In 2018, in June, I believe 29th, he amends it. He goes in and goes, right, now that I've looked at the phone records again, I need to change what I was thinking. Then he says, at 14:24, I tried calling her to see how long she was going to be. Exact same narrative. I didn't want to leave my number. I didn't want her to feel rushed. I didn't want her to feel obliged to call back. I just wanted to see how far away she was. Now he says that the 14:35 call was because Teresa, that was the exact moment he saw Teresa rock up. Teresa now rocks up exactly at 14:35. That's why he ended the call before it even hit her line, because he realized here she is. And then so forth. The same narrative at the reason why he called it 14:35. Because later on, he realized he needed to still make an appointment for the auto trader. And this time, he wanted to give his number because he did want her to call back because he needed to set up an appointment. So where does this fall in with Dawn? So Dawn calls in at 14:27 to Teresa. Now, the reason why Dawn is so significant is because she went into the trial. She was a witness. And her point of it was to state, she said, when I spoke to Teresa, I asked her, oh, by the way, did you work out whose address that was that you're going in the afternoon? And she says on the stand that Teresa directly says to her, oh, yes, it was the Avery brothers, and I'm heading there right now. So the significance is Dawn is placing Teresa Hallbuck's last stop at the Avery Salvage Yard before she goes off basically grid forever, indefinitely. And that's why you see Mark and Fassi working around Stephen, trying to link him to that phone. It's almost like they wanted him to slip up and go, oh, yeah, I did hear that call, because they wanted her still to be on that Avery Salvage Yard when that last call comes in, documented at 14:41. So the point of it is, it depends on which narrative you think fits best. Do we go with what Stephen originally said, and that was she came straight after 14:24, and that by 14:35 she had already come and gone, he was going to call her back? And the reason why a lot of people like this version is because it then puts Teresa on the road longer, and that means longer for the fact that she could have reached the White Lord Tower that she pings off, because it means that she had been traveling for an extra few minutes in a direction that could now make her ping more cleaner to why she was pinging there. And secondly, what I mentioned before, and that's the Dawn situation, where the Dawn had misrepresented what she said. Did she actually say, I'm heading there, or I've just left? And the other reason why some people like this idea, because people like, well, Bobby said he didn't see her anymore. That's kind of an indication that she was that he was trying to say that she might have been in the trailer and setting up his uncle. But then a lot of people thought, hang on a minute, maybe that's why he didn't see her. She was sitting in her car and she had just taken the phone call and she was answering it as she was backing out and leaving. And that's why he didn't see it, because she was sitting in there answering to Dawn. So there's some of the variables to the timeline. And then
law enforcement did seem to say, hey, was she on the phone? They kept asking Stephen, was she on the phone? Did you see her phone? Remember? Right? Like, so it lines up. If she was sitting in there on the phone call, it totally would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the next thing is, if we don't want to go by that narrative, which he always stated that was what it was, and then he changes it to the 14:35. For me, it keeps her there longer. It keeps her there longer and around the Avery salvage yard when the time matters. The probability of her speaking to Dawn makes more sense in the terms of the time duration of the phone calls, traveling there. But then there's a lot of inconsistencies too, and Mystic Jinx and Kath will bring this up. Well, I've definitely heard them say it, is the fact that Teresa's patterns isn't usually one of talking on the phone while she's driving. Yet with the zippers being in the middle of meant to be in the middle of this timeline, it just tightens it all. Like, she's now meant to have gone and left a voicemail on zippers. She hasn't found it. Then she's had to have found it almost immediately after. Joe Ellen saying she's there for like 10 minutes, and then there's a 12-minute drive. But now we have to squeeze in time that she may have stopped on the side of the road to take this phone call. Like, there's just so many parallels in like those sliding door moments. So both sides of the narrative can work.
Absolutely.
But it just means which version do you go with? Do you go with she had already left by the 14:35, or is that the point where she first arrives? That is how you start to work it out. Until you make that conclusion, that's the only thing I can give you guys as starting points.
Well, Dawn's described it two different ways in two different statements. She says that Teresa told her she was going to go out to the Avery property, and then in the next statement she said she was on her way. So you've got a past and a present tense.
Yep.
So which one was it? Was she on her way, or was she going to go out there? So she could be on the phone to her, parked on the side of the road, and saying, yeah, I can get out there today. Or was she driving, or even parked on the side of the road, and she said, yeah, I'm on my way there?
I don't know, but I do agree that it doesn't look like she talked on her phone and drove, because her phone records were like missed call, and then she checked the voicemail.
She has a lot going to voicemail, and then
check the voicemail, right? That's
she has
her
a lot going to
process.
voicemail, and you'll find that when she checks her voicemail, she's usually at a job, and she's about to leave that job, or along them lines. I'm sort of with Jinx on that. I really don't think that Teresa talked and drove.
Yeah,
drove.
I think so too.
Word.
I think it's pretty definitive, because you see missed call, checks voicemail. Missed call, missed call, missed call, checks voicemail, right? Like that seemed to be her process when she was en route, you know? Like most people should be doing, not talking on their phone, right?
But there's no doubt she screened her calls. She did it
Okay.
constantly. If you want to put that up, that I'm sharing, this is Teresa's cell tower information that Seeking Truth got many moons ago. So this pretty well lays down the law right here. And that last, as Kel talked about, that last tower, 21101, we really need Big Jeff to talk about this a little bit, deeper. I have I have some knowledge, but he can talk about it intelligently. We can see the calls lined up there. And another thing that I think we can't not mention, and I call it a beehive. Maybe I'm overstating the fact of how, I have, by the time trial rolled around, Don Paliska wasn't no longer an employee at Auto Trader. Now, does that matter? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But there seemed to be almost this competitive edge of who knew what. And I'm not saying that's true. Maybe they were all being as truthful as they could remember to be. I'm just saying it just seemed like that there was this, I won't say it was a complete one-upsmanship going on within the Auto Trader group of people, but you just read the reports for yourself, It always seemed to be something a little bit more about this person, a little bit more about that person, and of course Don ends up on the stand. But maybe someone else can remember this, but I really don't remember Don and Teresa really having any conversations prior to this 5-minute phone call where they're talking. Maybe there were, and I'm not remembering it.
Well, looking back over Teresa's records, no one, including Dawn's, ever spoken to Teresa for up to 5 minutes in one phone call throughout that whole year.
What I thought too.
So that I find that, is that coincidental that Dawn all of a sudden had a full conversation on what she was doing on Halloween that day, or
yeah,
it's just
could have been
random?
The thing is, that's what I always say to the team. I'm like, what do they say? One time is a mistake, a second time is a coincidence, and a third time is a pattern. I always look for the patterns. Whenever I do my research, I always go and say, look for the patterns. There is no proof that we've looked at that there was even a nuisance caller. There has been many of us that have looked through every document we can that is available, that was provided, and there is no evidence that there was a nuisance caller. And the only person that ever said that was Tom Pierce. Now, I'm not discrediting him, saying he just made it up, but maybe he's misinterpreted what she meant as a nuisance caller. And the other thing that I want to point out is we have the phone records, but we don't have any availability to the text messages. And back then, text messages was a huge thing. Like, you don't always make phone calls, you send texts. They didn't get the data for the text messages. So maybe the answer lies there. Yeah,
Bradley said that he sent her a text message. We know that this was real.
Yes, that morning, or that midday, he said he sent her a text that day. Yet they don't follow that up to see who else was sending her texts. Hell, she could have had a hustle shot. This whole case could rest on a hustle shot that wasn't done by a phone call, that was done by text messages.
Exactly.
Here's the address to where you have to go, and I will meet you there at 3:00 in the afternoon as my last.
Think about the victimology of the text messages. Think about the loose ends that it would tie up with the text messages, and
like they just completely blew it up. They just blew it off.
Right.
Anyway.
So I think for Dawn, we can't deny that there was a phone call. We see it in black and white.
Yep.
There was. We just can't be confident what was said. Now, for all we know, theoretically, and it's very speculative, but maybe she didn't even bring up where she'd gone, where she's going, or Avery Salvage. It could have been a whole 5-minute phone call about Halloween, for all we know, parties where they were going to. And like Dawn says, the costumes her son was going to wear. The whole point of having Dawn up there, though, was to put Avery Salvage as the last stop. So I know a lot of people like to say Bobby hurt Stephen. And in a sense, in terms of how Ken Karatz made it look, built off what Bobby had witnessed, yes, it hurts in a sense that it kind of creates a timeline for the jury. But then you've got people like Dawn that also hurt just as much, because this is a third independent witness that's now sitting there on the stand, also able to say this was around the last phone call we ever see her and she was heading there. That was the whole point of Dawn.
Absolutely. I 100% agree.
To connect Teresa as the last stop was Avery Salvage, to remove any speculative thoughts or reasonable doubt that Zippers was the last, or that this could have went in at a totally different narrative. That was her sole point, and that's what she committed to. And at the end of the day, it's hurting. It hurts. And I like I say to everyone, I get in trouble for sometimes my opinions because I say things that aren't favorable to Stephen. Now, I don't ever say things that aren't favorable to Stephen because I think he's intentionally lying. I really don't. I think this guy was taken advantage of. He's confused as it is. They twisted that advantage and they made him all flustered, and he just gets things wrong. And in a sense, sometimes maybe he does not exaggerate, might not be the right word, but maybe he just creates a timeline to help him, because at the end of the day, when you are innocent and you want out, you will change your versions to help yourself because you are innocent and you are trying to find the truth.
Even ever so slightly, right?
Exactly. So I don't blame him either.
Stephen was confused. He was asking Barb which day the fire was. Are you sure?
Yeah.
What day was that again? Like so I think it's fair point to say,
it is.
It is the story that he's sticking with, but if he's blurring the edges, you can't just be like, oh well, he blurred the edge on that, he must be guilty. Like that's not gonna help us either, right? Like,
no, it's not.
You have to understand how the process works with lawyers too, right? Like she's having him blur those lines just as much as he's
exactly. And that's what it comes down to. It's going back, and it, like I said to you guys before at the very beginning of this live, when we talked about the amending, you're going back and you have to be strategic. You have to go in and clean up these loose ends, because this is what the courts want you to address. They don't want you to come here. They don't want you to address these topics with what do they call it? Backfilled with speculative opinions. They want, how did you get from A to C? Show me B. And so when he goes back, and although it doesn't come across not like tightly that he's changing, it doesn't do him favors, especially when I pointed out. And the only reason why I pointed this out was because originally he agrees, and I know people don't like to hear this, but it's in black and white. It's in a sworn affidavit. Go back and look at 2016. He's one of the very first ones he does. He states, and I quote, "I was putting on my shoes. I was looking out the window. She started to walk towards my trailer." Bobby says the exact same thing. But guess who drops it from the narrative after the year of working with Kathleen? You never, ever see him ever mention that again. And that's Stephen. Not saying that he just wants it because it was true or whatever, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help that little bit of information. And the scary thing was, he probably originally added that because it was the truth and he's got nothing to hide. And that was just detail because it was a truth. But now it doesn't look good, because when you've got someone else saying, yeah, she did walk towards his trailer, that's the last time I saw her. And then the state's trying to say, yeah, she walked towards your trailer and that's the last time anyone ever saw her. That's when you have to make strategic decisions to drop certain things. And I think we see that. And again, it does muddy the water. It doesn't help Stephen. And I've had this discussion with other people, like, let's call it for what it is. The Star 67 doesn't look favorable to Stephen for that day. It's like out of all days, he uses it. He uses it the day that Teresa goes missing and then is wound up murdered. It's not a good look. But like you said, the contradiction is it doesn't affect him being luring her anywhere because it doesn't make sense. But in a sense, it just
it's circumstantial. It's circumstantial. It just doesn't look good. But
exactly, it just doesn't look good.
I mean, talking about Bobby, me personally, after all this time, I mean, I'm 7 years into this. I'm just going to tell you guys, I think the kid was compromised. I think he did what he felt like he had to do to protect himself. I base that on not just one thing, and not even just two. There's a double handful of things and the reason I say that. Do I think he killed her? No, I don't. I think because he was there, he was, however he told the story, he told it, whatever, the computer shit, that right, wrong, or indifferent. There's a handful of kids in that house, young boys. Does it matter? Well, yeah, some of the stuff was pretty damn bad. Okay. At the same time, I still don't think he killed her. I still think he was compromised by these seasoned detectives and the prosecution. I think that things were said to him that he had to make a decision to protect himself. Do I blame him for that? No, I really don't. What would any of us do? If you were put into the position when the recorder wasn't playing and they're saying, okay, look, you're on the property when she was there, you saw her, and now she's gone missing. What are we going to do? Right? Exactly. I'm not saying it happened that way. I'm not saying it happened exactly like that, but that interview that Jinx got us, the November 9th one, it was so over the top with how they talked to him. It was ridiculous. It was completely just over the top. The wrong direction.
Careers over something like this, Bobby. We wouldn't. We're family men. We wouldn't ruin our careers over this.
Right.
Can you believe they said that to Bobby? It's amazing.
I literally listened to that the other night because I've been doing a little background research on a few things that I'm going down at this moment. But I listened to that the other night and I had to laugh because the first part for me especially, I don't know whether it's just me or you guys find it, but the first part of the interview is like they're underwater. It's very distorted. It was really hard to hear. And then it kind of clears a little bit. You more hear the direct questions and then every now and then you get like a little clear sentence from Bobby. I think my favorite part was they give him this big spiel about how they wouldn't risk doing committing framing or corruption or this conspiracy. And then like you said, it's this 15-minute spiel. And then they ask him like, so what do you think? And he still has the cheek to turn and goes, Manitowoc. He's still saying it's Manitowoc.
Right, exactly.
And I'm like, I laugh because I was like, hang on a minute. This is where it gets conflicting for where Kathleen's narrative is going, because at this point you have to believe he's already completed the greatest frame up of his uncle in history. Not only has he been successful, he's fooled everybody. Here is the chance he has to drive it home. Drive it home. You've been that successful. The last thing you want them to do is start looking outside the box you've created. What does he do? He says to them, you fuckers are still the people I think it was.
Right after they told him, we wouldn't throw our careers away for this.
And I'm thinking that's where this is where it gets conflicting for me. Like I've said in so many podcasts, Kathleen can absolutely walk me to the line of why Bobby is a great Denny, and I will not take that away. He is the only Denny I think she actually legally has. But I will agree to a certain degree, she hasn't helped me cross that line because she hasn't proven it beyond circumstances. And those circumstances for me apply to Stephen. People like, well, Bobby could have done this, Bobby could have done that. The state is saying the same thing. What you're saying Bobby could have done, the rule same applies to Stephen. And that is what the courts are at right now. Not only, I know people say, and it is in the law, she doesn't have to prove who killed Teresa. She doesn't. She only has to create a reasonable doubt. We all get that. But the state have made it extremely harder. They've raised the bar on her because she has included a framing job. You
Well,
can't just
they want somebody to blame.
They do. And what they've now created is they've created a thing for her is a burden. They're basically saying to Kathleen, no, we want you to prove who it is because we need someone to blame. We can't have these boys
That's
get
right.
free and we're sitting here with the worst egg on our face ever. But not only do you now have to prove who it was, you have to prove at the same time it wasn't your client. You have to add and eliminate. It's a higher burden because when you go back and read the Courts of Appeal of decision in 2021, that was their back filler. That was what they were saying as an excuse based on the merits to everything. They hid behind the procedurally barred as citing of the law, but they hid behind the merits as being at no stage did you prove that your client could not have done this. That came under the bones, the blood, all of it. And I was absolutely shocked when I went back and read the 2021 Court of Appeals reply. They actually and I know I've said it, an apology, because I just want people to really understand it like I did, because it's so significant, because we're back there again, because we're back at the same hurdle. Even when Kathleen, so we have item FL that was retested independently by someone in her field that she got to say that it was wood and paint. And she had an expert to say this was not basically the bullet that ever went through Teresa. We have she had blood splatter experts that proved that blood, she wasn't just flung into the back, that she was most likely put in the back, and all these alternatives, and that there was she was bludgeoned and all these things. The Court of Appeal ruled. They actually said, we don't even have to do it, but because we see it, we're going to address all the points. And every single expert we ever saw in MAM 2, they addressed it, and they all said that none of them reached the bar, and they were all procedurally barred because not one of them ever excluded Stephen Avery in all the results that they gave. That was their conclusion to every single expert we ever see. That was their conclusion. Not only do they hide behind the procedurally barred, they hide behind the fact that they're like, and still you don't show how Stephen couldn't have been the one that put the bones there. You still haven't proven that it was the bullet that was item FL, although it didn't kill Teresa because Ken Kratz didn't ever say it did. You haven't proven that Stephen Avery still didn't fire the shot because Teresa's blood, DNA was still on that thing. This was all addressed. And this is why I keep saying you got to go back to where we're at now and what they've already addressed, because that is what we're up against now. And the state keep highlighting all these points. In their reply, they were hitting on all these points. They would say, because Angie's going to see this first. And what they're saying to Angie is, Ange, we're reminding you right now, the Courts of Appeal have already said this favorable to you, so you can hide behind that, and then they will look hypocritical if they go against what they have already formed an opinion on. So use this to your advantage. Here you go, here you go, here you go. And that's why I think Kathleen strategically has gone, I need to amend this whole motion. I need to go back and clean it up because it's loose. And they keep saying to Kathleen, you keep giving us from A to C, but you're missing out B. We want B. How did you get to how did you get the solution that you believe Bobby planted the blood? What tool? Prove what tool? These are the questions you have to kind of hit in terms of a burden, because you're introducing a framing. Now, I will admit with one thing out of everything I've just said. This is why an evidentiary hearing is warranted, because these are the issues that should be addressed in the courts and opened so you can address these. Kathleen's basically doing a fine print. She's putting forward the arguments and saying, if you want to hear more, this is what the premises of my arguments will be. Give me an evidentiary hearing and I'll try to provide B. The state is saying, no. This is about tax dollars. This is about resources. This is about bringing up ghosts for Teresa Hallbuck's family. You don't hold back now. We want to know what you have. Put it out on the table, because if we can dispute it now, we can save the energy and time for having an evidentiary hearing. That is why they're replying. They're trying to stop it because they're basically saying we don't need it. We can already dispute and already shut down her arguments. And that, for me at the moment, the worst thing she has going against her is the DASI computer. I don't think she's reached the bar of motive just yet.
Interesting. I don't know what you guys think of that. When I was listening to Kel, what does that look like? Same thing. That's what we call a medical tent.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's what they did in the RAV. Why did they put a tarp over the RAV? It's like looks the same to me. That's what makes me think. Like,
Yeah, it's weird because they put the tarp over claiming from the rain, but yet the tarp's off, you know,
For
a
the
couple of
rain.
hours later or whatever, and
Yeah,
it's
during the
pouring
rain.
down with rain.
I'm sorry, I was just popping that in there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, just for like, oh, yeah. And then syringe because they anyway. That's what they do in there. They plug the quarterback full of feel me good drugs. Anyway.
Behind the Magic's asked a question. So
All
if a
right.
call with Auto Trader lasted almost 5 minutes and she was done the auto salvage appointment within 3 minutes, how far or close to the tower of the 141 call?
As I remember from Kathleen's brief, as the crow flies, that tower at Whitelaw is 13 miles or 14 miles from the Avery Salvage Yard. I think that's right.
Doesn't she hit the same tower after leaving Zipperers, and she hits that exact same tower at the 241 call? Or
I'd have to
am I
pull that
wrong?
back up. Let me pull that back up and we'll look at
Yeah,
it.
that's because
don't
to me
remember.
that looks like she's either heading home or heading back to Zips. Well, her phone seems to be pinging out that way.
Scroll down here. Not went too far. Okay. I'm going to put this back up on the screen.
Bring it up.
Share. Okay. So zipper call was at 212, right? So that would be 1412. Well, that's actually, there it is.
The first zipper call where she can't find the place.
That was at 213, let's see, 212, and that's tower 21,923. And the Whitelaw Tower is 21,101. So 21,923 and 21,101. Two different towers. Let me zoom in on this a little bit.
Oh, so it is. So you've got the 21923, I think, is the one on County B, and the 21101 Villager Road in Whitelaw.
I think that's right.
I think that's how it goes.
She doesn't hit the Whitelaw Tower any other time. That last tower that she hit, she doesn't hit it another time.
Let's move back up here.
Actually, that's a good question.
I'm looking.
No, so it looks like she's slightly off track, which is more inland, isn't it? So it's sort of like she's, yeah. So it's like she's further out, maybe heading towards home. Oh, look at that. No, she doesn't. So yeah.
I'm not seeing it here at all.
How did she hit that last tower it just doesn't make sense to me. That like the fact that they want to claim that she's in the driveway or near Avery's and hit that tower, that last one. It's always been a mind bender for me, and I think the lack of concrete, provable location pinpointing is why it was never like, because there's nothing you can. I mean, you can say, well, she hit this tower, and then I'm sure some expert could come and say, well, we can demonstrate how you can hit an adjacent tower that's a little further away. I don't, it's so hard to wrap your head around why this wasn't dug into more, but that's why Big Jeff is our guy. We need to get him on here.
21102 right there. I'm not seeing 101 tower at all, other than the very last call. That's weird.
That's Branch or Whitelaw?
The 101 tower is Whitelaw.
Okay.
Yeah, we need Big Jeff here to do some analyzing for us.
Jeff, I put a picture up of the cell towers and their addresses, sort of. It tells you the towers and which ones she pinged off, I think, for the day.
There you go. If I remember reading this correctly, like where she was when she hit her tower, I feel like personally, she kind of left home a little late. That's how it felt like to me when I was looking. I was like, well, she's only that far at this time. You'd think she'd be a little further. But yeah, it's an interesting map. She hits
can you
that.
just close it in just a tiny bit so we can see,
Which part? 2110 or which part? Just the
whole map, just a little bit smaller, so we can see the salvage yard and the zippers. So there's the 21101. That's over there. And what was the other one? It was
923, I think.
Yeah, 23. So that's up there. Is that County? It's County Road. It's on County Road B, I think. I'm pretty sure it is. So she's
We
sort of
definitely need Jeff. Big
Yeah,
Jeff.
we do.
Because I remember him breaking this down to us before, and he's like, I'm like, so just hit it to me. Does that mean that she was definitely of the Avery Salvage Yard? He's like, no, not necessarily. It helps that she is off, and I'd explain it, but there is variables to the towers. It depends on where you are on the property and the busyness of the towers, and these aren't exact pinpoints. They're radiuses of it's an estimation of, do you fit in that radius of that area? And that is why, with Kathleen's narrative with Bobby and Cuss Road and all that, although it looks good, how she presents it, it absolutely doesn't match 100%, because you have him there 10 to 20 odd minutes past when her phone has already been there. So it doesn't ever put them at the same location at the same time. It just gives you an estimation that they could have been in that same area at one point or the other. Didn't Kathleen, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Kathleen go into this case, and one of the first things she hit on her original motions was these points? Like, she was going down that avenue that Teresa Hallbuck absolutely left the Avery Salvage Yard.
Yes.
And was really deeping into this, and then she just dropped it, gone. You never heard of it again. The pinging towers disappear from all her motions.
It was
never heard from
inconclusive.
again.
That's what makes me feel like it was on the track to begin with. Like, this is the right track, folks. But she's like, I can't. It's inconclusive. I'm never going to be able to prove it, am I? And then their experts are like, sorry, ma'am. And then she just move on from it. But that's why I think it is important to remember that if it's one of her early things and she just dropped it, she most likely dropped it because it just wouldn't fit. It doesn't mean it's bad evidence.
Yeah, and not being able to prove it conclusively, it becomes circumstantial. But I want to make just a brief comment about Allie's softball life comment, and she's right. But here's the thing, to me, then this is the crux of really why I got involved with the case, is because of the lengths that law enforcement and the prosecution went to convict Avery, and basically they cheated to win. And that's how I see it. That's that they used they found ways to circumvent, and they still did it long post conviction as well. The bones, all this other stuff. They did it in such a way, let's just say for a minute that he is guilty. And I don't believe that he is. Don't take me wrong. But let's just say that he is. The way that they presented the case and the steps that they took, that didn't, a lot of these things, a lot of things did not, the jury never got to hear, that they really should have heard. They should have known about. I think it says something about the system and how they used it to get that conviction. And if their driver was to get a conviction for any number of reasons, I mean, I think obviously, like a lot of people, they wanted to end the depositions because of the lawsuit. It was going so badly with them. It was going terrible. Still, my point being, if the state has to go to the lengths that they did to get a conviction for whatever reason, to me, that's not justice. It's just not. Even if that person's guilty, do it the right way. We don't want bad people walking around.
We have to do it the right way. We have to.
Yes.
Because otherwise, that's an extremely slippery slope there, Jack.
Sure it is.
The reasonable man would assume.
And just bouncing off that a little bit what Jack said, beautifully said, but I agree. They cheated. They really muddied everything back in 2005. They got Stephen into the corner that they wanted. And I just made a comment, but I might elaborate more on it just in case it doesn't come across with where I was going with it. But that freaks me out. And I know I said it to a few of us privately in a voice a few days ago, but I agree with what everyone says. I really do. And that was, everyone goes, the state was not thinking that Making a Murderer documentary would come and expose everything. I agree.
Right.
They had no idea. And I agree. But that wasn't what they needed to fear. Stephen Avery had been picked up from the Innocence Project before. He was a high-profile personality or a case that could have been grabbed by anyone at any time that wanted to look at it because he had merits. He had been wrongfully accused before. And that's what freaks me out now. No, they weren't expecting Making a Murderer, but they weren't not expecting courts of appeals and appeals left, right, and center from, it could have been anybody, whether it could have been the dumbest lawyer on the fucking earth to the most highly sought out exoneree lawyer that he eventually did get, and plus a bonus of Making a Murderer. He wasn't invisible to the world when this went down. And what I fear now is that if they plan this, if they really are the framers, or that they had some kind of contribution to this way this whole thing went out, is they've cleaned up all their loose ends. And that's why, I'd hate to break it to you, but that's why this case is kind of takes one step forward and 10 steps back. When I went back and read the the state's reply, they, in their introduction, they kind of give a tally of where the case has been, where it is now, and what's going on. They actually have the cheek to remind the courts that up until this point, I think he's given like 11, between 8 or 11 motions, and he has lost at every turn. 6 of them have been with Kathleen Zellner. The only time he's ever been successful in a motion with Kathleen at this stage is the very first one, which was the motion for retesting, which she got, and that was only half-assed because that got stopped because behind the scenes they stiffed her in not giving her the RAV, and they ruled before, and we all know how that went down, and she only got certain, I think it was 6 things to test out of that motion versus what she was going for, because they shot her down, they hold her out. So that is what I'm scared for now, is that we have the Tom Skowinski and it's new and it's fresh, but when you read the state's report, they have dumbed it, they've made it look so insignificant. Like, even if they didn't know it was coming and this really is something that they couldn't have seen coming, they've got an answer for it. They're reminding the state that, but they're reminding the courts that this is not a case of you just looking at the new evidence. Yes, and I know I've always said this, and you'll hear Tracy say it, when you have new evidence like Brady's and Denny's and all that, the whole point of that in a post-conviction, because you've got to remember, we're at post-conviction. This isn't its first rodeo. This is designed for the state protect the conviction and to keep people in. This is the hard stage. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, overall, Kathleen, we're here, help us out, hear me out. But I don't know. I think the thing that's scaring me is they're always up one step ahead of her at this stage. And I know it's not favorable, but it's the reality of it. And I just fear that what Jack said is so accurate in the terms of they planned it well back then. That they knew that DNA is what got him out. It's DNA that needs to keep him in. And there is nothing that has moved forward in this case of that to change that. And that's scary because Tom Skowinski is so new and fresh in it, and we're putting hope in it. And I do hope that there's a hearing, but how far will that take us in terms of where it could go? It can either open up the door, huge doors, and have the case be so perfect and fall into Kathleen's lap, or it could shut, and it could almost shut indefinitely. There's always options for her, but it will just make everything 10 times harder. And I'm at that point now. I have not lost hope, but I just fear that they see everything coming. And the thing that I just don't get about Tom Skowinski is the timeline of him. He happens before anything. He happened on the night of the 6th, before the only thing that had happened by that stage was the RAV was found, and that morning the RAV had been photographed and then sent away to be tested, and the results come back on the 10th. So he's new. He was fresh, and there's nothing that had stopped them from being able to go to him early in the investigation and shut him down if they saw him coming, and they didn't. So I don't know whether that's because they missed him or whether they generally just didn't know he didn't exist either. And if they generally didn't know he existed either, then that's not a Brady. So it's all these little things that freak me out that I don't know whether you guys read much into it, but I think it's because I've taken the time out to really invest in investigating the courts and the system and what we're needing, that I'm seeing it for what it is.
But you were saying before that they didn't expect Netflix and people to be digging as deep as what people have into the case after the fact. I was just thinking, Tom Skowinski's quite late in the game for some sort of lead for Kathleen Zellner, even though she hasn't got the other end of the call, which would be very helpful. I still think that there's more stuff out there that we haven't received, that law enforcement have maybe labelled CD's numbers instead of wording them, that, I don't know, more evidence that's going to come to light. That's what I'm hoping for. Because Tom Skowinski call is relatively new. So who's to say that there's not more information out there?
We need another man miracle, guys. Somebody's got to step forward.
Man miracle, yes, that's what we need.
Somebody that knows something, somebody that knows something that, maybe is
whistleblower.
they have no
a week ago,
reason.
yeah,
Like,
but
they're
there's
like,
got
I
to
have
be
no reason to
some
stick
more
my neck out.
evidence that they've
Right.
thought was irrelevant at the time, but is so important now that we just
Well,
haven't received.
I think I would purchase a bottle of whiskey for this person. Jack would buy him a bottle of whiskey. I think we could probably get 12 bottles of whiskey for somebody like this. I think
I'd
the
run.
pot could grow pretty quickly if we got somebody to come out of the weed work.
I'd run him some. I'd run some shine for him.
Absolutely, I'll make you some whatever you want, man. If you got real information on this case that's not made up, that's not questionable, that's rock solid, yeah. You got. We're gonna support you for sure. You know. So I unfortunately I feel like that's is it. It's really frustrating to be at this point. You know.
Well, that's the other side of it. You know, you
new evidence at this point. It's why post conviction is so incredibly difficult, right?
When you have the court basically forgave what they did in 2011 with the bones. They basically just said, okay, it's inexplicable, but whatever. And it's not okay. To me, it's not okay. You don't take any evidence from a case that especially it's written into the statute. You don't mess with it until that person dies or is released from jail or the case is solved in some other way. You just don't mess with it. And they did. You know, and the other evidence too that is gone. You know, they can't retest the key, can't retest the bullet. There's so much case evidence that's missing or was never turned over in full to begin with. See, this is the other part that it's kind of like we don't have it, guys, but then it turns out they do have it. This is the other part that of the criminal justice system that needs to be fixed. If someone's guilty, prove it. Just turn it over. It's not that we're necessarily standing here saying, hey, we demand that Stephen Avery's innocent, blah, blah, blah. This is about, it's bigger than that. Yeah, okay. His name is attached to what's happened here. And Brendan got completely screwed. But it's how the process worked. And the process to me, which is what making a murderer opened us up to in exposing this whole apparatus. It is a business. Don't forget this, people out there. This is a huge business, the criminal. And once you're in it, Kelly's illuminated it very well. Once you're in and hooked, they got their hooks deep all the way to your spine, and they're not going to let you go just because Kathleen Zellner says, "Hey, my guy's innocent. You let him out." No. You're going to have to bring something to the table. That's the way the system is.
So much easier to find a repeat customer than it is to find a new customer, isn't it, Jack?
No doubt.
Once you're in the system, right? Yeah. Whew. How are you guys feeling? You got any more questions out there? Where are we at? How's everybody feeling?
There's been some great comments. There's been some great comments by a lot of people in the live chat.
Yeah, sorry if I haven't been able to keep up with that.
I've been trying to. Bob says I can run off some kid shot. Well, I don't know about that. I'd probably give it a try, even though I am from East Tennessee and grew up in that region. I never really tried my hand at it. My dad used to make wine when I was younger, but I don't know if I'd try my hand at shine without taking some hardcore lessons first. I don't mind drinking a little bit of it though, Bob.
Absolutely. Well, at that point, we kind of ran through everything. We answered some questions. We did some exploration with the photos, which really, I hope we can continue to do that, Jack, because I think
absolutely
I can't be the only one that likes to just explore these photos together. And so I guess we're at that point where we're going to get towards the wrap up. So I'll just go around in the circle again and ask everybody to just, either wrap up comments or just to sign off, whatever you want to do. So let's start with Calf and say, thanks again for coming, Calf. Appreciate your bringing your questions and your new blood evidence. And
thanks for having me again. And thanks for everyone for coming and listening and asking questions. It's a lot of fun. And that's about it, really. I'm sitting in pajamas and I really am busting for the loo and I've got to go to the shops. Sorry.
Sounds about right. Sounds
Yeah.
about right.
It is.
So we all have to get to that point where we got to go. Yeah. So
Yeah. I just,
appreciate
it's just so much fun. And we just seem to cover so much in such a, even though it has been a couple of hours, it's still a short period of time where we do cover a lot. I just love it.
Well, we'll try to do it again in 2 weeks. You know, that's kind of our live schedule. So
Yeah.
I hope you can come back next week, Kev. I mean, in 2
me
weeks.
too. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And we'll move to Kelly.
Yeah, a lot of coverage on some pretty interesting topics. Thanks everyone for coming. Just like I addressed today, people, if you guys can find any of us, we're on Discord. Don't like if you want a certain topic discussed, you don't have to even like join it as in voice. Just give us one of us the heads up and we will happily bring it up for you, and then like you saw today, we'll discuss it. Again, we can't give you all the answers because we don't know either, but we will definitely discuss it and bring the topic of conversation to light. Yeah, you know, I know we had Jeffrey Fulcrum in our conversation today. I was skimming it. I wasn't really, you know, paying much attention. I've read a lot of his comments on Reddit, on Facebook, and I know he addresses the mud. Like I've said to him before, I pride myself in terms of trying to be the devil's advocate, and I've always tried to see both sides of the fence. I think you have to. I think we would be hypocrites if we don't. And like I say, I get myself in trouble because sometimes I'm not favorable to Stephen. Doesn't mean it changes my view on him. I still think he's innocent. I still think he's been completely wrongfully done. But you have to walk through the shit to get to the other side. And although I'm bringing up Jeff and how I'm trying to turn that into where I'm going with it is,
Bring me into the shit.
No, not you, as in Jeff Fulcrum, the gentleman with the mud theory and stuff. Although
cheers.
I appreciate what he's putting forward because that's his perspective and that's his view on it. On the same way, I've read everything. I've given everything a chance to digest and understand it, but I don't get it. And that doesn't mean that I'm, you know, not that I'm discrediting him. It's just that it's not a topic that I follow with him and I can't get there. And for the people in the channel that you're trying to have the conversation with, Fulcrum, and you're trying to address it, they're obviously not getting there either. And that's not saying that maybe you're addressing it a little bit wrong way or how you're addressing it. But we're not, just because we all can't get there with you doesn't make it that you're right. And in saying that, it doesn't mean that we're right either, because we none of us know. And I know you're only putting it out there because you're trying to address it from how you see it, but you can't prosecute us and bring us all down because we don't see it with you. And I get that, because I get that with me. I say things and people don't see it the way I see it. But that's why we have these discussions.
I mean, I'm kind of ready to arm wrestle someone over that blood smudge on the lens. I just don't see it. I think it's a reflection, but there are people that are ready to take me down for this opinion here, Kelly, you know?
Absolutely. And I have the opinions of things as well, like the Dassey computer. I will go head to head with someone who I think is stretching a lot of the content to make it a narrative that they need it, but that is not the facts. And
No.
I want to address it, but I have to do it respectfully and I have to do it in my time, because I don't want to just take that. That's the thing about interpretation. You can have one piece of evidence and have three people look at it and three different interpretations of how they view it. Does that mean that we're all right? Does it mean that we're all wrong? Does it mean one of us is right and the other two are wrong? No, it means interpretation. You can stretch whatever you need to fit the narrative you are in. The one thing that I try to pride myself in is non-biasm. I try not to get myself stuck in thinking that I'm right and that what I'm thinking is the way it is, because we're finding you're then closing yourself up for new information. Tom Skowinski rocked me. He rocked me when he first came out because for a long time I was convinced that the Rav came around from the back and that Wilma, what's his name? Wilma? What was the gentleman's name? That saw the white Jeep.
Oh,
Jack?
yeah.
Siebert? Is it Siebert?
Siebert.
Wilma?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was convinced he saw a Jeep. Like, there's a white Jeep out there, guys. That's how it happened. And then when Tom Squincy is saying, no, it was pushed. I'm like, no, don't play me, boy. And I found myself getting locked in, pushing up against it because it didn't fit with what I believed for so long. Once I started to open myself up and go, you know what, let's now look at it for what it is. I will be honest with everyone. I don't believe him 100%. Not that I think he's out there making it up. I believe his event. I believe the event he witnessed is accurate. I believe his misidentified the people. And I think he's misidentified the day the event happened. Certain details aren't aligning. The event itself, I do believe he saw someone. 2 people, in fact, in the middle of the night doing something. But it's little things like that. And again, I just want to thank everyone for always joining us. You know, we're all not going to agree. And like I said on the last premiere, we need to agree. Because if we all agreed, the conversation, the case wouldn't move forward because we'd all be just stuck going around and around in circles. So thank you for having me. J Jax, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kel and Kath and Jeff and everybody in the live chat for sticking around. We've had a really good conversation. I'm like Jeff. I really like going through and looking at the photos again and seeing what we can pull from them. I learned some new shit tonight. Thanks, Kath and Kel. Thanks for making me look at photos again. No, I'm kidding. I really do like it. And not only photos, there's other pieces of evidence too that we can dive into at some point, whenever during these lives, that if people want to talk about it, and that is the various phone calls we have, whether it be a dispatch call from Manitowoc or whatever, a jail call or however many. There are other aspects. Again, this moves us, at least me and other FOIA writers that are out there still putting pen to paper and trying to get more information that we don't have, new stuff. I'm in the midst of this argument right now with Calumet County. It's a ridiculous one, and I'm not going to give up just yet. I have actually contacted somebody on the outside to try to help if they've got any suggestions. This is just short of hiring a lawyer, which I'm going to tell you guys, I'm about a half an inch from doing, because what he's doing, what Wigert is doing, is it is on the complete. To me, what he's doing as a records custodian is wrong. This Brendan interview that I want, that was apparently just Jim Dandy and fine when I requested it, had to be converted, no problem. I figured it would be because it was on cassette. And then now he wants to come back, 3 months later or more, actually more than 3 months. Nope, sorry, Crime Lab's not converting cassettes right now. Can't do it. And then he wants to side off Stephen's case to me about Brendan's case. Sorry, dude. There's nothing going on in Brendan's case. There's absolutely no standing at all to me. But anyway, I'm trying to get help with that. But yeah, don't lose hope. Don't. Just keep pushing. You just never know. I really wish we did have we've talked about it before, all of us here. I wish we had a whistleblower, somebody that would step forward. Hey, step forward and claim that 100,000 or however much it's up to. Maybe that's not a lot of money to some people, but to other people, I promise you, it's a lot of money. To me, $100,000 is a lot of money. I don't know about you, Jeff, Cal, and Cap, but that's a lot of damn cash to me. We really need someone.
It would make a big difference in my life. Let me tell you, it's a lot of rounds of golf out here.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, to wrap up, hey, let's do it again as soon as 2 weeks. I'm whatever you guys want to do. If I can help with photos or whatever, I'm there. Thanks, everyone.
Well, see you in 2 weeks then, Jack. Fantastic. So thanks again, just everybody out there. This is the 27th. So the next time that we see you guys, it will be the new year. So I wish everybody Happy New Year. Hunker down if it's cold. If you have bad weather in your area of the world, I hope you are safe and warm, or in my case, cool and dry. And I want to say thanks again to Brian and to Kel and to Calf and to Jack and everybody out there that's contributed somewhat to this, either in chat or in the past. And say, have a great New Year's. This has been After Discussing a Murderer. See you guys.